All right, we're going to get going with our general committee meeting tonight, 7:15 on May the 8th. I'm going to start by saying thank you. I didn't realize, Grayson, you had so many supporters as student mayor. We aren't used to this, but you're certainly more popular than the rest of us are. So, Grayson's our student mayor. It's a program. There's lots of kids here. I just want to make sure I outline it for you. It's a program where students at schools around the city come and participate with City Council for 2 to 3 weeks, and at the end of it they give a speech at Council on what their experiences have been, and was something that I was involved in as a youth. So if you don't like my decisions, you can blame the teachers that got me into the student mayor program, and Councillor Morales as well was involved in the student mayor program. So it's pretty neat how it actually has been able to shape some lives going forward.
I don't know if you're selling it, Mayor Nettle.
I'm going to welcome members of the public this evening. Under the city's procedural bylaw, members of the public won't be able to speak tonight, but you are able to sign up for a deputation to be able to speak next week, both in favor and against any decisions that are made this evening. If there are, and in large audiences, I just want to make sure that I cover this off. If there are any signs that folks want to put out, they're not welcome here. The actual opportunity is again to be able to go and speak at council next week as part of the deputation process. So the first item on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. I'll read out the title associated with the recommended motions printed on the agenda. Members of General Committee may ask that an item be held to discuss further. If it's not held, the motion is deemed approved on consent. No further discussion of the item would take place at the General Committee meeting, and it would be recommended as a motion going forward to City Council for next week. The first item on the agenda is deferred business, and this is motion 24G078, referred by City Council on the 1st of May. Request for exemption from signed bylaw 2018-029 201 Fairview Road.
Hold, please.
That's held by Councillor Harvey. Our next item on the agenda are the reports of Reference Committee, the report of the Finance and Responsible Governance Committee from April the 23rd, 2024. Councillor Harvey, can you please provide a summary of that meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. The committee met on the 23rd. The first item was the 2024 Q1 internal audit status update report. The main highlight of that is the 7 targeted areas that our internal audit team is going to concentrate on this year. They are in regards to wastewater treatment facility upgrade, billable rates, payroll, transit contract performance, right-of-way payment handling, fraud prevention month, P card and expense reimbursements, along with any fraud and wrongdoing program oversight that comes forward. In the initial Q1 update, there was no red flags that would be of any cause for concern or anything to directly highlight. Then committee approved a request by Councillor Morales in regards to a community project fund out of his ward budget regarding the planting of mature spruce trees at the intersection of Stundon Lane and Maple View Drive East. The next item, we had a presentation by Theatre by the Bay, and out of that presentation a motion came forward, which is before us tonight, in regards to some funding being given to Theatre by the Bay for the upcoming year and a couple of future years ahead. The next item was a deferred item in regards to key performance indicators for Council's 22 to 26 strategic plan. There was no additional add-ons to that, and they were based around all of our initial performance indicators that tie into our business plan, which is an affordable place to live, community safety, a thriving community, infrastructure investments, responsible governance. The last thing that we spoke of, and again passed with consent, was another community project fund submission by Councilor Morales regarding the installation of a automated external defibrillator at Painswick Park, and that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor. The items that were recommended from the committee are FRG 1, the 2024 Q1 Internal Audit Status Update. It's approved on consent. FRG 2, Community Project Fund Submission from Councillor Morales regarding the planting of mature spruce trees at the intersection of Studden Lane and Mapleview Drive East. It's approved. FRG 3, Theatre by the Bay. This is the funding that we approved. That's approved. FRG 4, deferred from Finance and Responsible Governance Committee from March 20th, 2024, concerning the performance indicators for Council's 22 to 26 strategic plan.
Hold.
That's held by Councillor Corser. FRG 5, Community Project Fund Submission from Councillor Morales regarding the installation of an automated external defibrillator, AED, at Painswick Park. Can I get a member of council to hold this? Held by Councillor Morales. Staff reports. Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Committee.
Hold, please.
Held by Councillor Harris. DEV 018-24, the Bear Creek Ridge Subdivision Residential Parking Control, Ward 7.
Hold, please.
That's held by Councillor Harvey. DEV 019-24, Waterfront Allendale Station Park Multi-Use Sports Field and Sea Cadets Parade Ground.
Hold, please.
That's held by Councillor Kungle. DEV 022-24, Community Safety Zone, Prince William Way, Mapleview Drive East. That's approved on consent. FAC 003-24, Sea Cadets Relocation to South Shore.
Hold, please.
I'll have Councillor Harris on that. INF 003-24, Albert Street, no parking. That's approved. IT 002-24, confidential trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board with which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons. It's approved on consent. Okay, folks, I think the majority of folks here tonight are here for the relocation of the Sea Cadets and the parading a sports field next to that. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to make two changes to the agenda. The first one is I'm going to move those two to the front of the pack. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to allow debate on both at once. The reason for that is I'll get into and explain a little bit in a second. So I'm going to ask Councillor Kungle to withhold your amendment at first and put the item on the floor with regards to the parading and sports field. Yes, please.
Okay. I'd like to put the item on the floor as presented.
Okay. And after we have the vote, then we will vote on the other one, which is the South Shore. But I'll allow speaking to both at once because they are so connected. One of the things I wanted to do before we got into the holistic debate on this is to set a little bit of context and background, because one of the things that I heard yesterday from some of the members of the public was that they hadn't been alerted to the changes that were coming down the line. And I think some of that, I would say a majority of it, is we live in a world where there's no newspapers going out anymore, and Councillor Negusie's actually asked for us to look into a way to secure another newspaper back here. But it's left some gaps. So Carl, if we can go to Google Earth or Google Maps or whatever you have available, perfect. So at the meeting, I believe, the end of September, there were a number of things that were approved by.
Could the volume please be put up? It's difficult to hear.
Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. So there's a few things that were approved in the meeting in September that I think have an impact on the South Shore of the City of Barrie. First of all, if you look at Allendale Station, to the east of that, we approved staff going and coming back with an Indigenous space, a space that we could have set aside for members of the Indigenous community, both those who reside in the City of Barrie and those who are part of the traditional groups that use the land, whether it was the Wendat or right up through. That was to the east of Allendale Station, as you see on this map. The second things that we approved was the planting of 1,000 trees on our waterfront, which will be around the waterfront, but I would anticipate a lot of those trees would actually be on the South Shore. So we're waiting for that plan to come back, but that's 1,000 trees that will be planted on our waterfront around the city. The third thing that was approved for the South Shore is partnership with the Barrie-Huronia Rotary to create, and I'm sorry if I get the name of the tree wrong, but I believe it was the cherry bud, which is like a cherry blossom, and it creates that type of both spring and fall, I guess, ambiance where you've got everything flowering at once. And in Washington, D.C., the Rotary Club there does something similar with a native species, and that would be planted somewhere from around the wastewater treatment facility right down to Minette's Point to help with that, and maybe even on the south side of Lakeshore Drive as well. The other item we had asked for, I'll get into in a second, which is what the crux of the matter is this evening, was the relocation of the Sea Cadets from downtown to the South Shore. So Carl, if you can bring up the slides, if that's okay. So first of all, I've said around this table many times that accurate information is incredibly important. And when we don't bring accurate information, whether we mean to or not, it becomes a little bit dishonest. And one of the things that we struck today when I was sitting with the clerk going over the staff report was that in the staff report, and I've said this publicly, I think I might have been the first person to say it, quite frankly, and I said it yesterday in the ANA meeting that we had, the size of a parading ground is roughly half the size of a field, a soccer or football field. The fact is not that, and when we were looking through it today, it says it's roughly 80 by 160 paces, which equates to, when you do the math, around 14,464 yards cubed. So I just wanted to apologize for that, because that was something I did say in a meeting yesterday that was inaccurate, and something that's inside the report as well that's inaccurate, and I think we need to make sure that that's righted up front. Next slide, please. So as you can see, this is the current Sea Cadets space. They have been using that for many years. They have a lease on this for another 23-ish years. And it's both an issue for the City of Barrie, and it's also an issue for the cadets. If you can go to the next slide. You'll see that on both sides of the cadet space, they have the transient docks to the, what I'll refer to as the east, and then they have the full-time dockage to the south. And if you can imagine being a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old child trying to launch a 12-ish foot sailboat out of there, and you've got yachts and boats and all these things going by, it creates a very unsafe situation for those kids. It creates an unsafe situation for the boaters as well, and certainly been something that has been talked about for a very long time. In fact, when I was elected to council in 2006, the first committee that I was asked to sit on was the Sea Cadet Relocation Committee. As you can see, we didn't do a very good job of relocating the Sea Cadets between 2006 and today. There have been many options that have been proposed. One was Tyndale Park, there was Manette's Point, there was, I believe, other places on the South Shore, and so that's a bit of a history of how long this has been going on. I asked today how long has it actually been going on, because I've been here since, my first was 06, and I was told it was about 25 years that this request has been ongoing. Next slide, please. The sailing area on the South Shore, as you can see, this is much more open, much less boat traffic. As you go to the west, there's the launching area, so that certainly has more boat traffic, but this is far better than what you see over with the marina downtown in terms of safety for all of those kids. Next slide, please. This is, your mayor is not an artist. You can see that, but I wanted to kind of show what happened between September and today. In purple was the original place, I believe, that we had discussed having the Sea Cadets move to, with the parading ground essentially where it is right now. And that's not where we're going to see that happen. Our staff came back with an idea to use the South Shore. One, to save money. Two, because there's lots of empty times over at the South Shore. Three, because we already have boating facilities inside there, storage underneath. And four, we believed, except for the parading itself, that it could meet the needs of the Sea Cadets. Through that process, it was then looked at, well, if we're doing a parading ground and that's going in, what else could happen? And there was a petition that was circulated. I believe it was probably, and based on the audience tonight, it was probably a majority soccer plus cadets that came back. There was a couple of thousand-ish signatures to that, asking for it to be both parading ground, but also duplicating as a sports field for our young people to play at. So that's the background, and I'll go to the next slide, because there's a couple things I just want to set straight. I saw there's a petition being circulated that uses the word sportsplex. This is what shows up on Google when you look up sportsplex. This is not being proposed on your waterfront, and I certainly wouldn't support this being proposed on the waterfront. But there is a sports field being proposed. We'll go to the next slide, please. And that sports field is a multi-purpose field. We've used the word multi-use. The problem with the word multi-use, when I looked it up online, it did actually speak to not one, but many fields in the same place. And the correct term that we should be using for this is a multi-purpose field, which allows multiple things to happen on the same area rather than anything else. For perspective, this photo is not representative of what's being proposed in the City of Barrie. There is no track around it. It appears to be smaller based on everything I was able to see online. And next slide, please. I think that might be the end, but next slide. This is an example, I think, of, I took a Google Maps shot of this. This is an example, I think, of what you're probably going to see when it's all said and done with lines throughout. If you see that on the bottom left there, there's a canoe, a red canoe. That is taken, that picture is essentially just to the north of the Gardiner Expressway in Toronto. And this is a field that they have there. It's open to the public. If you go by at any time, you could have everything from kids to teenagers to adults playing soccer or other sports, and it usually has many different games happening at one time. And I think that is the end. Perfect, that's the end. So there's the context of what we're discussing this evening. The final piece I want to leave with members of committee before we go into the debate portion is that in the discussions with the Sea Cadets, when we were discussing, we were actually looking at originally an indoor parading area. That is not in the budget. The Sea Cadets have come to the table and said, okay, we get it, that's not in the budget, but can we do something outdoors? And now you see what that is. So there have already been some concessions made in order to facilitate this, and I'll now go to members of council who would either like to discuss the subject or to provide amendments. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And it is great to see the gallery full and to see the range of citizens. I think that's one of the exciting things about tonight. It's always challenging when our community isn't completely aligned on something, but it is great to see people from across the age spectrum here invested in our city and what we will do or not do with this piece of property. So thank you for that. Just wanted to address, Ward 8, we obviously, this is and I agree with everybody, it's a jewel of the city. It's everybody's property. It's not Ward 8's property. So everybody has a stake. So thank you for being here to take part. A few questions for you, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Ms. Banfield. I think the primary concerns that have come to me relate to environmental concerns. What people see as the least developed part of the lakeshore is something that many appreciate, and their aim or hope is that it stays that way. And Mayor Nuttall, thank you for the prelim. It was really helpful to kind of set the context, because I even forgot about the Indigenous commitment on that side, which I know is maybe some of the questions that I had around the possibility of utilizing the space on that side of the South Shore does compromise our commitment to the Indigenous community, which we've made and are happy to, and also with the trees and the buds and all that beautification that will happen on that side. So I appreciate that context, so thank you. And I'm sure most people don't have that detail either. Some of you may, some of you may not, so I'm sure you appreciate it as well. Ms. Banfield, certainly with where it is, it's located by Campbell Bay, and so there's real concerns about the impact on the environment. What are the controls, the considerations, the standards that must be kept should we do anything with this land? I'm sure that we would have a great deal of responsibility to manage through Lake Simple Conservation Authority regulations and such, with anything that we did would meet those standards or exceed those standards?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, that's correct. There would be consultation with the Conservation Authority. There's reference to any trees that potentially may need to be removed, to be replanted, replaced, to have a net zero impact, and obviously the ability for council to determine whether we use natural turf or artificial turf. There's different environmental factors along with that, and quite frankly, it's a different project than what's been proposed before. It's a soccer field which is different than what has been proposed on the waterfront before.
Right, thank you. Yeah, so one field, one multi-purpose field. One of the other, Mayor Nuttall highlighted one of the important parts of the relocation of the Sea Cadets, and it was something that I learned actually was the importance of parading. In the report, and it was highlighted by Mayor Nuttall, I know it was noted as 100 meters by 77 meters. Can you give us some context? And I understand, again, being a novice in the parading, and we have members here from the Sea Cadets here who obviously would be experts on what is the desired parading size? Is it was that kind of a discussion about what could be done, or was that something that it was just one of those things where we thought it was this, but really is bigger? Is that something that we have any information on?
Through you, Councillor Nuttall, or Mayor Nuttall, sorry, to Councillor Harris. We did have preliminary discussions with the Sea Cadets in preparation of the 2023 September report that Mayor Nuttall referred to, estimating, and we have Ms. Chislett with us as well, roughly 500 participants on the field, and then I just did some quick math based on the new information. It would be about 2/3 of the multi-purpose field that would be required for parading, not half.
Okay, thank you for that. And so, and in the report, it talks about if you're going to have the parading area, then the potential is to make it a multi-use facility such that it's a better, I guess, investment and use for this particular site. Is what was yeah, thank you. You touched on it, Ms. Banfield, again through you, Mayor Nuttall, just the issue of the trees. So certainly, and also the other concern around from residents is the impact on any wildlife. I went by there, I'll say, I mean, and not to be smart, I saw a tent in there actually, is what a person living in there. But what is the impact, and what is the way to mitigate or review the impact on wildlife as we consider moving trees and reallocating to meet the tree standards? Is there a way to judge how much wildlife, what impact on wildlife will happen if this happens?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, absolutely. Like, there will be full reviews of the environmental, whether it's the trees or, as I said, if there is wildlife. Again, working with the Conservation Authority, working with the city's own terrestrial ecologist to evaluate all of those factors. And like the expectation would be for the city to be like any good property owner and address those impacts.
Wonderful, thank you. And Mayor Nuttall, maybe a couple more. With the path and people, all of us, I mean, if you're in Barrie, hopefully you've had a chance to enjoy the waterfront, the path. Can you explain how the path will be maintained or adjusted should this be approved and go forward?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, that I don't believe that there's the intention to impact the trail in this instance, and if there were impacts at the time as we were ground truthing things, we'd be making those trail connections. We'd revise them. We'd make the new connections. The intention is not to decrease connectivity in this area.
Great, thank you. And I had read that, but I wanted people to hear that because I think it's really important, and not everybody has the time to go through the full report. And so thank you for that, answering that question. Maybe, again, you mentioned both items, and they are connected. They're intricately connected. With regard to the new space that's going to be built in the existing space at the South Shore to include the Sea Cadets, I noticed that we would again be required to do an Indigenous, like a study to make sure that there was no Indigenous remains. Is that correct? So even though we didn't do a new building further to the south, we still are required to do an Indigenous study on, even though it's a site that's already been built on. Is that correct?
Ms. McAlpine.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, through Mayor Nuttall to Councillor Harris, yes, we would still be required to undertake at least stage 2, and from there, further information at that point.
Okay, thank you. And just maybe, I don't know if Ms. McAlpine, you're the expert in all things that happen in Barrie. Was there findings when the South Shore, when that work was done the last time?
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Harris, I don't believe there were any particular findings at the time. The standards have changed for some of that work over time, but I don't recall anything happening at that time.
Thank you. And maybe one more while I have, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I've also had members from the Canoe Club reach out around the potential impact on them. And I know it's in the report, but just again, for the record and people to hear, it is fully aware that we know that as if this goes forward and their space gets altered and enlarged to bring in a new partner. Every effort will be made to mitigate the impact on their operations, their programming, and their use of the space.
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Harris, I can confirm that, and Mr. Hughes can provide additional information should the members of committee wish.
He was nodding very, very well to that, so thank you. And I'll try to be louder. I apologize for talking softly. Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I look forward to the conversation from the group around the table. I can say definitively that the Ward 8 members that live closest to this, the Manette's Point waterfront community, have expressed their concern. I think many are here tonight. And so I hopefully, and through the dialogue, most of those concerns will come forward. But the path, the wildlife, the impact on the environment, the trees, was certainly the high priority items. So thank you for addressing those. And again, thank you. It's National Youth Week, so good on the youth for being here tonight. I think that's wonderful. It's Children's Mental Health Week as well. I'll give a plug for that. So thank you for being invested in our community. Now, maybe one small thing I'm regretting, we don't yet have our youth council operating yet, because that's something that we had approved in this term. And I would really love to bring this item to a youth council, because often we hear a lot of comment on, people's opinions of what we don't want, but we don't often hear about the future-looking voice, and I see a lot of the future here tonight. So I really think it's important. Thank you for being here. We have to hear all voices and make a good decision with all the information, so thank you for being here, and I look forward to the discussion from other members of council.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to go in the order that I saw the hands, and that we'll start with Councillor Hamilton, then Councillor Harvey. I can't read my own writing. Then Councillor Rietma, Councillor Morales, Councillor Corser, and Councillor Negussi.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Nuttall, I'm also happy to see the full stands this evening, because I think every resident in Barrie, believe that the waterfront is our gem, and we want to protect it at all costs. And any change to the waterfront makes us all a little bit anxious. So I completely, appreciate and respect the amount of input we're getting and opinions on this, because I do believe it's sensitive. I've had a number of conversations. I've spent a ton of time on this file and portfolio specifically, and I just want to review some of the concerns and questions that I'm getting, because I think it'd be helpful. And one is why? Why change anything? Why do anything differently? Our waterfront's beautiful, let's not touch it. And I think you've done a great job highlighting the need. The need to relocate the cadets has been an ongoing issue for 25 years. And I get the question, well, why? What's wrong with their current building? I wish we could show a video of inside the building. You did a high level. It's unsafe, as Mayor Nuttall pointed out, just from the water perspective, and I'm frequent on the water, and I see these polar sailboarders, and I can attest to the fact that it's unsafe. But the building itself is decrepit. It's embarrassing that we have our youth in this building, in this facility. No washroom facilities. It's ancient, and here's a prime piece of our waterfront. If you guys have seen it, I'm sure we all have. You drive by it every single day. It's nothing to look at. So, there's just a desperate need to relocate them. So I think we cannot keep questioning that. If you are questioning it, I welcome you to go take a tour. They will be happy to tour you in there. You can see the facilities. You can see the need for new facilities. The cost to upgrade that, retrofit it, renovate it would be extreme. We're better off really looking at how do we leverage that asset? Could we have a waterfront restaurant? There's so many opportunities that we could actually utilize that land for. So I'm excited about the potential and the opportunity for that land. So where do we move them to? That's the second question. Well, why South Shore? Why here? As you've already said, staff have looked at so many other options. And for me, building a net new building, it costs money. If we can leverage a current asset, if we can leverage the South Shore Center to not only benefit the cadets, but it will actually benefit the rowing club, the canoe and kayak club, to actually expand their facilities a little bit more as well. We are a growing city, and we have, to encourage and promote these types of activities, I think is so, so important. So for me, the question of the relocation of the cadets to the South Shore, I'm very, very confident and very, very comfortable with what's come back in the report. And I thank staff for doing the investigations over the past 25 years, and this is where we landed. I think this is the best option that we can come up with. In terms of the multi-purpose field and the need for the parade grounds, which I also respect and appreciate, and I think it was very important, the information that we heard tonight, clarifying the fact that these parade grounds would be 2/3, it's almost essentially the same size as what a soccer field would be. So if we have a field there, again, why don't we maximize the use of it? The cadets have great programming, and I know you serve hundreds of youth. Your camps are jam-packed. If you've seen those camps in the summer, they're hustling, they're bustling. But at the end of the day, it's a few hundred kids. How can we maximize that? How can we encourage it use by lacrosse, by soccer, by football? Well, it's making sure that that parade ground field is built in a way that we can maximize use and really promote it for all the kids to benefit from. I think Councillor Harris just made a great point. In this role, you often hear from adults, right? We get complaints every single day and opinions. It's so rare that we hear from the youth. And these are the residents that are going to live here over the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. I can't wait for the youth council. These are the opinions that we need to hear about. This is what they want. They want to be able to access our waterfront the same way we do as adults. And so for me, again, I get it. I get that it is scary and we want to protect our waterfront. I get the concerns about environment. I think, Ms. Banfield, you've appeased me in a little bit, even knowing the amount of work that staff is going to undertake to make sure that we get this right. We are making sure that we're planting 1,000 trees, 10,000 trees, always 1,000, 10,000 is a lot, 1,000 trees along the waterfront. So for me, I mean, there's got to be a middle ground here. I have stood on this property. I walk, I run, I cycle. I do all the things on the waterfront, so I'm intimately familiar. I see the foxes there. I see the water life. I absolutely understand. The area we're putting it is sort of that grassy area. For me, it will have the most minimal impact. And again, it's a field, it's green, it's artificial turf, but so I see both lenses, and I respect and appreciate anyone who's in opposition, because I do get some of the concerns are valid. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to look at the bigger picture and really looking at how do we build something that we can all be excited about, the next generation can be excited about, that really opens up and allows access for youth to really be on our waterfront in a fun and exciting way. So I know there's going to be pushback, I know there's going to be resistance, but and I've heard it from my residents. I'm happy to meet with my residents. I brought it to my Ward 10 Councillor Committee. We're happy to have people attend that in Ward 10 to ask more questions for it. And we went back and forth on this for months. Since we've talked about this, I think October was the first time it came. And I think staff has done an excellent job listening to all the input. So I am very supportive, and I'm just really excited to see all the bodies and faces here. I think it's predominantly soccer, but I know I've heard from people in lacrosse. I've heard from people in football as well. I think this is great, but we will take a slow, cautious approach to make sure we get it absolutely right.
Councillor Harvey? Sorry, folks, I know we want to give applause when somebody's saying what you agree with, but I'm going to ask that we don't do that. It's just the decorum we request inside the chambers. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I don't want to repeat everything, but essentially I do agree with the comments that have been made by my two colleagues so far. My big piece with this, especially from the Sea Cadet piece, as you highlighted, there's a safety issue with where they currently are. Not only is their building and the area around it a bit of an eyesore, but it's not the best use of that section of waterfront being so close to the core of our downtown. But especially when you look at it from a safety perspective with the marina traffic coming in and out of there, then you've got the other docks right beside them with the transient boaters. And myself being a boater myself, however, I don't boat out of Barrie. I've seen it countless times where boaters don't follow the rules when it comes to these non-motorized vessels, and they just go whizzing by them, cause a ridiculous wake, and sometimes almost flip them over. So I could imagine probably all the Sea Cadets probably have countless stories of things like that happening. And also, too, Kempenfelt Bay can get a little choppy on its own without having that careless boater going by at a rate of speed. But so that piece of it's a no-brainer. And obviously, they need a certain size to be able to do their parading. And it just totally makes sense that if we're already 2/3 of the size of a field, that you want to do something that's best use. and service the most amount of people, opposed to the little bit of use that it would have if it was only just the Sea Cadets. So that's where, I do agree with what's being proposed. The location, obviously there's going to be differing opinions of that. However, when you look at where it's being placed and what's around it, I think staff have done the best possible job in trying to protect as much green space around it as possible, but also being able to place the field where it is. The only questions that I do have, and it's more from the sports side of it, because obviously the Sea Cadets, if they are relocated to the South Shore, have access to the bathrooms in the interior of the building during their time there. But it's more from the sports side of it. I know it does speak to it a little bit in the staff report. However, the rendering doesn't show, like, when you think about the amount of people that could come and watch, because I could see this as becoming potentially the place for the Rovers to play, potentially the place where we're going to see some of our high school teams starting to play, because this would be the first city-owned asset like this, because the other ones at Georgian and at the school in Ward 10, they're owned by the schools. So it limits our ability and access to them, whereas this is a city-owned asset. But would a future phase, or it doesn't really show about stands, because I would expect that we're going to potentially down the road have hundreds or so people coming to watch some of these games that are being played with parents and such forth, along with the possibility of a small building that would have a couple of change rooms and possibly washrooms. And I'm not so sure 70 parking spaces is quite enough. And I can see there's obviously some space as you're looking to the west that parking could be expanded a little bit. So just looking for staff's input as to why things are the way they are there, and why we're not looking at having those additions from the onset if this does get approved.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey, thanks for the questions. And certainly in bullet 34 on the staff report, there's a list of items that are excluded, and one of those is the washrooms. And so there certainly is the ability to add to the budget, should council wish. Although, as you said, it could be done at a future phase. It doesn't necessarily have to be done right this minute, but it is flagged in there for council. As it relates to parking, as you said, there is some parking proposed, as well as a small area that could have an expansion. As well, there is waterfront parking kind of all along there as well. So again, there's definitely some elements that could be decided now or could be decided at a future phase, depending on council's wishes and budget.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'll leave my questions at that, but I think we're going in the right direction here. This is definitely the best use, and getting the Sea Cadets onto this side of the bay opposed to the north side. The key is safety, and obviously as been highlighted by Councillor Hamilton, I think our youth outnumber our adults here tonight. So it just speaks volumes. Obviously, it means something to the kids, probably a lot more than the adults, but and obviously we have to look out for them, and they're our future, as been highlighted too. So thank you, and those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'm now going to go to Councillor Rietma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I have just a couple of questions for Ms. Banfield. The first one is the drawing that we have in our report is quite clearly a very preliminary one. Can you just comment on what the next steps are in terms of design and exactly what you plan on doing?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councilor Riepma, we're recommending a design-build approach for this project. It just has efficiencies with time and with cost. So we would be going through an RFP process, and then there would be design development that would be happening, or conceptual design, at the same time that we're actually starting to mobilize on site. There's where the efficiencies are in time. So certain types of site removals, site mobilization will be happening at the same time, but then the design process is going on concurrently.
My second question is, the South Shore building is a historically designated, and I'm just wondering what impacts or what is intended in terms of the process on that building.
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Riepma, there is no intent to impact any of the heritage features, which is the main floor of the building. All of the work to be done would be on the lower level, which is not part of the heritage designation, and similar to Mr. Bradley's response, it would be a design bid build process with architecture, an architect working through a comprehensive design and stakeholder engagement to inform that design.
Mr. Mayor, in terms of my comments, I think it's really high time, way past time, that the Sea Cadets, we move them to a location that works for them and will work for the city. They need a parade ground. I think that developing a parade ground the way staff have proposed it makes sense. I went out and walked the site. I think we've picked the area that will have the absolute least impact on the existing bush. And I think that if we do a proper replanting job, I think we will enhance that area. The waterfront is you know, everybody's territory, right? Everybody's very concerned about what we do at the waterfront. And I think it belongs to all of the city, and we definitely need to do it right. But I think we're well on the way to doing that right. I think in terms of the multi-purpose field, I think that's exactly the right thing to do, because we're going to have a lot of people that want to use that facility and need to use that facility as we grow. So I think that we're on the right track on this one.
Thank you, Councilor Riepma. I'm now going to go to Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I didn't have notes, and I thank my colleagues for giving me some time to write some notes. It's better for everybody when I don't go off on tangents. Mayor Nuttall, I think we just need to stop holding ourselves back. Not you, not me, the royal we. Here's why. To the why not just leave it alone question. Because it shouldn't have taken 18 years since then Councilor Nuttall was appointed to the Sea Cadets Relocation Committee to get to this point, and it shouldn't take another 18 years for us to even do anything about this. What our residents have been asking of the city, Mayor Nuttall, has changed. I want to remind people, we say the waterfront's the jewel. We say it belongs to everybody, not just Ward 8. I agree with Councilor Riepma, it belongs to everybody, including residents that are all the way in the south end in Ward 910. And I think that's clear. But what our residents have asked of us have changed. Barrie used to be full of rail tracks, dirty rail tracks, tanneries on the waterfront for the kids who are young. You know Bradford Street, you know Lakeshore, that was full of tanneries and polluted land. And we evolve. Things change. The sports we want to play have changed. The needs of our facilities, the organized sports have changed. And so we need to change with it. What I can't seem to understand is the fear of change of some of the residents in opposition, but I want to understand it. So some things that I think none of us want to see on our waterfronts: drug use, okay? Encampments, antisocial behavior, and a feeling where people of all ages and all genders don't feel safe walking at night, specifically along that stretch. So those are things we don't want to see on our waterfront. And adding a facility like this, Mayor Nuttall, is exactly the kind of thing, it's not a magic solution, but it's exactly the kind of thing that is going to mitigate those things that we don't want to see. Because what we do want to see is a people presence. We want to see organized youth activities. such as Sea Cadets and sports. And Mayor Nuttall, I don't know if you know this, I actually did Sea Cadets for about a year when I was younger. I wasn't a major Chambly person, but I do have the jingle stuck in my head of "We are Chambly, mighty, mighty Chambly." And if you can't hear us, shout a little louder. Yeah, fun fact. There's pictures out there. So that facility is a tin can, and I'm not going to be polite about it. It is a tin can. I'm thankful for the people in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that provided the facility. But again, we're ready for the next step. And to the youth in the audience, to the people in Sea Cadets, you deserve better than a tin can. You deserve the appropriate facilities to get into sailing, to get into knots, to get into those kind of things that will serve you well for the rest of your life. Another thing to the youth in the audience, because a couple of my colleagues have referred to them, I'm looking at the faces and I'm guessing on ages, but the majority of you will be eligible to vote in 2 elections from now. The majority of you will be able to run for one of these council seats 2 elections from now. And fun fact, the mayor and myself got elected at 21. So if you're like 13, 14, literally could be in the seat in 2 elections from now. If every single one of you voted, you could have flipped the mayor's federal election, you could have flipped my initial election, you could flip my election if you got another friend to vote. But my point being is that it does matter for you guys to show up, and I'm sure you showed up because your parents brought you, or coaches, so thanks to them as well. But it makes a difference, because these are the kind of things that if we don't make this decision, it's another 18 years possibly until we get to a situation where we can do this. Now, I'm going to go over some points, something that gives me peace of mind about this report, Mayor Nuttall. Public connectivity and the access is maintained. I actually initially thought we'd cut off that little walking path and it would have to go around and towards the road. No, the connectivity is maintained. That's huge. It's not, also, I'll be blunt about this, it's not even that many trees that need to be removed. If you pull up, and I'm not asking IT to do this, but if you pull up an image of what is there now as to where the field is going, I would say 65, 70% of that is actually right now just grass. And I'm not a tree person, but those trees aren't necessarily in the best of health. So we're not just going to a critical forest area. Finally, this activates our waterfront with a very appropriate size. And to the people in the stands that are concerned about this, don't want this here. I've said this before about another area of Barrie, and I'll say it again. If you don't like the size of that now, imagine how much you won't like it in a couple of years when a bigger, more commercial-like facility gets proposed, because it keeps happening. So one of the things I say to residents in my ward when they don't like a development because it's happened, it's not me threatening, it's not me being passive-aggressive, it's me saying, look at what has happened in situations where somebody was reporting a certain amount of density, it got defeated, and it comes back in a different market, different reality. What usually happens is their concerns go up because the things making them concerned get quote-unquote worse according to perspective. So that is also important. This is a very appropriate size and a very appropriate facility. And finally, Mayor Nuttall, a facility like this would empower parents to enroll their kids in activities that have better facilities, which increases retention rates, meaning more busy kids and young teens mean less idle kids getting into trouble. And I'm not blaming kids for breaking into cars or anything like that, but if we as a society want these kind of things to stop happening, we need to invest in our youth, right? How many times do we say we need to do preventative social justice initiatives and things like that, not at the end when people already have issues? This is the very kind of thing that we're talking about. So no, it's not inappropriate to bring up encampments. And if we want to just improve our society, this is an investment in our children, it's an investment in our waterfront, in our downtown economy, in our city, and in our future. Mayor Nuttall, the time has come for this multi-use field at this location, and I'm proud to be voting for it tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Morales, and I'll go to Councilor Corser.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll parrot what everyone else has said around the table so far regarding the safety at the waterfront. I am a sailor. Where I keep my boat, we have a sailing school. And quite frankly, I see a lot of close calls and dangerous situations with powerboats and sailboats, people who don't know the rules of the road. And I know that our cadets definitely do. And there's that expectation of safety, and it's not there at our waterfront. I applaud the moving of the cadets for that reason. I've seen too many close calls. But I also have lots of questions. just a few questions of staff on the actual field itself. First off, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to, I guess it would be Ms. Banfield. What is the lifespan of an artificial turf?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Courser, it would obviously depend on the amount of usage, but certainly there's areas of where it's anywhere between 13 to 15 years of usage.
And what would be done when the artificial turf needs to be replaced?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Courser, at that time, it would most likely be a capital project that would be in the city's capital budget, and staff would price it out and do all of the things that we do with a capital project, making sure the artificial turf is disposed of properly and the site is remediated as we need to before we would replace it.
Beyond the capital costs, what is the recyclability at this point of an artificial turf? Where would that go? Would it go to landfill? What is the end life for that artificial turf?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Courser, what I can say is that manufacturers have heard this discussion and have changed their technologies, which allow these products to be post-use recycled, as they have not in the past, to avoid the landfill.
And that would be the plan with, if this goes forward, that would be, of course, the plan. We have the resources or a vendor or several vendors in Ontario or Canada or that could take on that responsibility at this time? 13 years out, it's a while, but sorry.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, it would be designed into the specifications that we would be speccing a field that could be recycled at end of useful life. And then, yes, there is actually one company that works internationally that's out of Barrie that works in this field. They'll be welcome to bid on the project because it will be an open bid.
Okay, thank you. I asked because I know that there's several different plastics in industrial use that we assume are recyclable and they are not. And if they are recyclable, the cost of actually shipping or having that done is cost prohibitive. So it's good to know that that has been looked at and that future has been looked at. Also with the Vimy Ridge oak trees, the moving of the Vimy Ridge oak trees, there's a sensitive topic because they have been in for, how long have they been planted for? Sorry.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Courser, I'm guessing, but I'm going to say around 2015, 2014.
Okay, so they've been 9 years? Okay, so is the sensitivity, and I am not a gardening person, but I absolutely have a lot of concern about the health of the Vimy Ridge oak trees because they are quite significant in meaning. And there is as concerns about moving these oak trees after they've been planted for so long, uprooting them. There is no concern. Is there an area that has been chosen to replant those trees?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Courser, yes. So we've already met with urban forestry staff on site, done a full review of the 17 remaining Vimy oaks. There is an area of the plan that is set aside that will actually be more beneficial to their establishment and growth. They are not performing as well as hoped in the location they're in.
I had heard that. That's why I was concerned about moving them. So that's good news. Also, another question I have for staff is the enhanced fencing around the actual field. I'm wondering this is our waterfront. This is our taxpayers' our area. My concern is of the page 7 of the report. It says about enhanced security fencing surrounding that field. So I'm wondering, my concern is if that field is not in use as a booked event, kids' youth soccer, whatever it may be, lacrosse, are other people able to come in and use it? Or is this something that is going to be locked out to the public for general use without booking it or being part of an association?
Through you, Councillor, or Mayor Nuttall to Councillor Courser, the intent for a facility of this investment, and typical in other cities, even Georgian Fields, is that it would be fenced. We do have issues with other sports fields where gates are left open. We do have gates, but we've left them open in consultation with ward councillors, and we have issues with them becoming informal dog parks, for example, vandalism in fields and other things. I think the key message with the fencing here is that, especially on the lakeshore, it will be buffered through sensitive landscape design. It'll be materials that'll be of a different color that will fade into the landscape. It's not going to be galvanized, for example, if that's a concern of council. So there is already pre-designed thought into how it'll appear.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in there. I think Councillor Courser's question, because I've spoken with her, I think Councillor Courser's question, I've spoken with her in advance of this, is more, less around the look of it and more around the access for the public to it. And so rather than ask you a question, I'm just going to state a fact, if that's okay to council, which is we decide what happens at our recreational facilities, us 11 around this table. If we give the direction to our team to have somebody there running open access programs, or to leave it open at all times, or to close it off and only use it for elite sports. Those are decisions that are made around this table, and staff can make recommendations, but the final decision, it's ours.
Okay, because I can appreciate the concerns about, I'm a extreme dog lover, but I can appreciate different areas where there's an open field and there's a fence around it and there's an entrance, so people will use these areas as unsanctioned, if you will, dog parks. And it becomes a concern when it is a sports field and you've got kids using that field for obvious reasons. So I understand the conflict with that, but I really would love to see this as a field that can be used by the public when it is not in use by an organization, associated team. So that is something that I would really like to see a conversation coming forward about that, because it is our public space. We should be able to use it. Also, another area that was touched on earlier about the spectator area for the future seating. Unlike some of my colleagues, I'm not in favor of having a built-up area, buildings around this. I think that it needs to be much more of a natural space, as much as natural as an artificial play field could be, sports field could be, but is there any plans, I've had questions about this as well, so I just wanted to make the question out there. Is there any plans right now or in the foreseeable future to build hard stands or bleachers in this sports field?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Courser. So there's probably some bleacher seating, but that's probably not what you're thinking. Like you're talking about, I think, more about like stadium seating and full-on tiered, almost like a building, if you will. So that's at this point not contemplated, but there will be some seating along the field for obvious reasons. Around 100 or so people or seats kind of thing versus, stadiums that could be well into the thousands.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, because parents got to sit somewhere. and yell at the referees somewhere. Yeah, I like the idea of this being a community field and not an organized, like branded sports field of any kind. This is our waterfront. It should remain so. And this field should be a community field and not commercialized. And that is where I stand on this. But I do think that I was against when I wasn't against it, but when I saw it come up, I felt a little kind of a little kick in the stomach on it, because I knew this was good. A lot of people are passionate about this topic. And then I remembered a lot of calls I got from friends. I always say that not every kid plays sports. That's my favorite saying in a lot of conversations we have. But I remember a lot of calls I've received from friends, good friends, and their kids do play sports, and there is a lack of fields for them to access. And so I'm really going out of my comfort zone with this, but I think that this is probably something that this city needs. I just hope that it's managed in a community-minded way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I also want to just take the opportunity to recognize former Mayor Aspin, who's with us this evening. Mayor Aspin, welcome back to the chambers, and thanks for joining us this evening. I'm going to go over to Councillor Negussi.
Thank you, Mayor Nadal. I read this staff report very carefully because change is sometimes, a challenge, and this is a huge change. So I had a few questions, and I reached out to Ms. Banfield and her team, and actually I just want to thank you to Ms. Banfield and her team for a quick response. I found it, your response very extremely great. Mayor Nadal, our waterfront is one of the most spectacular attraction we have in our city. However, we have never used this specific waterfront location until now. Having a sea cadets and an open multi-purpose field for our kids to use for organized or drop-in sports. I mean, as a soccer coach myself, I believe it's a great achievement for all the residents of our city. And I believe this will be one of our most amazing community centers, regardless of our situation, background, status. I believe it will, belongs to all of us. And it takes, what it takes is our willingness to use this space. So I support this staff report, Mayor Nadal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Negussi. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Nadal. To be honest, I wasn't really going to speak of this. I understand that it's very sensitive, the waterfront and stuff. And I think some people are kind of looking at this as the proposal, I want to believe, in 2017 about the baseball stadium, and it starts here. We go, we give them an inch, they take a mile. I don't think there's any desire around this table for, stadium seating, dressing rooms, and all that. I think this is about adding to our facilities for youth. Like, you look in this room, it's a lot of youth. And then I get thinking, and I see, I spend a lot of time with Councillor Harris, and he's in a tough, predicament, because it's in his ward. And, and I stop and I think sometimes, and I go, man, do we live in a privileged world? We complain about environment, this is going to affect and stuff. And then, if you don't mind, Carl, could you pull up, oh, thank you. If you could move over a little bit. I look at this and I go, we're going to put a field that people are worried about the environment, but we're privileged enough to live on the water. We live in a waterfront community where I look at this and I go, we're worried about young kids playing in a field. And then I think back to other things. We have a proposal for a very dense site at the fairgrounds. One of the biggest concerns from the residents was nowhere for anybody to play. No open fields, no spaces, no nothing. Well, this adds to that, an open space for people. And it just, like, I was surprised to see all the people, like, you know, and like I said, we were getting emails and I was talking to people, and I think, like, when you elect people, like, you should be embarrassed if they don't do things for 25 years. This is the first time this is actually going to get done. This is like what you elect people to do, to get things done. Like, we have residents, like all these parents that are with sports teams and the Sea Cadets and the Navy League and stuff. They're all volunteers to make our community great. And then we have some people that are like, they become obstructionists. They don't want no change. There's nothing that I ever see come here where everybody's enthusiastic about us moving forward. So I will be supporting this, and I understand some people's concerns. I had some great conversations with Ward 8 residents, but I think it's an overreach. I think some of the verbiage they've used and like trying to push an agenda that really doesn't exist. This is for young kids, and I'll leave this with this one comment. The youth are 25% of our world. They're 100% of our future. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And well, you won't catch me throwing kids out of the council chamber, okay? I'm going to go over to Councilor Kungl.
Thank you, Mayor Nettle. I have a couple of comments, and then I'm holding off because I do have an amendment that I'll put forward, but I didn't want to jump into changing the conversation without being able to discuss the main item. Overall, I do want to thank the level of engagement from all parties that have reached out to, whether it's individual councillors or all of council and whatnot, to be involved in this because it's important to hear your voice. The other piece I'll say is, often I think we throw these really great ideas and visions at our staff, and they've always been able to come back with very, very mindful and considerate aspects around the caretaking of things that are very important to us. So to Ms. Banfield and your team, and Val and your team between Parks and Forestry, I think we ask you to move the world for us sometimes around the art of what's possible, and you always come back with something that I think it is probably the best we'd ever see if we were going to consider this type of piece. So from the movement of the Vimy trees to the considerations of protecting the trails, the addition of water refillery stations and bike racks and that broader scope, I do want to actually really appreciate that. I think you've gone above and beyond around giving us a concept that helps us also to appreciate the art of the possible in this space and where our dollars are going. And so I do have an amendment that touches on the financial side, but I did want to comment on some of the pieces. I mean, the biggest piece, and I'm not an expert around artificial turf, but I do appreciate staff's comment around abilities to look at material that can be recyclable or reused, or in some way, hopefully being further into that technological changes as we go. I do appreciate that, in this, we've also had many, many different groups coming to council for sports and recreation opportunities and fields, and we do need to look at that broader strategy. And part of that, I think, was nicely put, that we've always talked a bit about the pilot in some way of understanding the pros and cons of artificial turf. So, with at least the balance of the information on hand, I'm okay to proceed forward with this, and with, I think, some of the diligence around it, and an appreciation of the other pros around whether that's, reserving water, and also not having to use fertilization. So I do see those things. Would love to know more as we proceed through this around the benefits and what we are finding out about artificial turf, so we can be mindful as we go forward in any other type of additions. My understanding is also it's a $10,000 at just over $10,000 less to manage year to year in operating this type of turf. So I thank you for that. Lastly, and I won't say, I have a fuller appreciation of the inside of the Sea Cadets unit as they hosted the public after the Battle of the Atlantic commemoration on Sunday. And you do amazing with what you have and for so long. So I'm also quite excited to see how this can be an updated space for other communities at South Shore. That is a high-use facility with a lot of long-term supporters in rowing and with the Barrie Canoe and Kayak Club. So it's nice to see that in addition to multi-use space, what we're going to be renovating around the South Shore, I think is also a bit overdue. And I think is to the benefit of many. So the investment I'm comfortable with. I do have an amendment.
Yes, Councillor.
I'm just going to pull that forward. So I do have, you've got in front of us on our agenda, just so I'm not reading the full 3 paragraphs, but just to let you know what I am looking to change. That paragraph 1 speaks to the synthetic turf multi-use concept. Paragraph 2 talks a bit about the funding, and paragraph 3 talks a bit about more of the operating maintenance dollars. So my amendment is specific to paragraph 2. And what I am doing is inserting a new revenue source. So it'll read, paragraph 2 will be changed to read the following: that the funding in the amount of $4,622,777 be approved for the implementation of the premium synthetic turf multi-use sports field concept, with 30% of funding from the development charges and 20% from the tax capital reserve, and half of the funding sourced from the cash in lieu of Parkland Reserve. And it was my understanding that this has been identified as an opportunity to be able to bring down the $4.6 million to actually needing to really find $1.2 to $1.4 million overall. So I thank staff, for identifying this opportunity. It may not be best to kind of get into the nitty-gritty, but I'm not sure if at this time anyone has questions about that, but that is the amendment.
Mr. Miller, today we chatted about this. Is there any more context you'd like to give to the amendment from Councillor Kungle?
To you, Mayor Nuttall, I'll actually just give you credit. You gave me a call and asked me to take another look, and it was a good question you asked. There is an opportunity to fund that portion from development charges.
So on that, I would say thank you for looking at this, because I know cost is always something we're quite mindful of, and not only how to make it happen, but how to make a pretty decent, like a beautiful concept, I'd have to say, credit to the team, come forward without maybe being as much hesitation about how we're going to fund it. So Mr. Miller, thank you very much for being able to make me feel more comfortable that we can put something forward to the public and say, we've got 3/4 of the majority of, funds at least accessible to us, and maybe the burden is a little bit less, but we'll find a way forward.
It's always a good day when developers are paying for 3/4 of the field. I got to be honest with you. Mr. Harvey, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'm supportive of this. I'm just kind of curious, through you to Mr. Miller, with a project like this, why wouldn't it all have come from cash in lieu of Parkland Reserve? Is it the fact that that reserve isn't funded well enough? And I think the key point for a big take-home for everybody here is this isn't going to hit anybody's tax bill. This is all coming from reserves, from other sources of revenue other than the tax bill. So that's the key take-home from this. But just kind of curious as to why you came up with the equation with the 50-50 split. I am supportive of the amendment, but it just seems like the cash in lieu of Parkland Reserve is exactly what this is for.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor, the flip side of the question might be, why isn't it all development charge funded? And there were actually some projects identified in the DC study. Most of those costs were called post-period benefit, meaning they're after 2032. So we're not actually collecting those DC funds today. The portion, the 30% that we allocated in, we are actually collecting, and we have. So that was one opportunity to use existing DC funds. The cash in lieu and reserve, like a lot of the city's reserves, is committed. There are plans in that budget that council can change, but the intent is for land of parks. So the opportunity to use the DCs now allows more funding to be used for some future projects in the next few years.
And just a follow-up to that, because I know we've heard it several times at Finance Committee and such forth with presentations from yourself and your staff about the pressures on the development charge reserve as if you were to sit and look at a graph, it goes up and then it sometimes takes some pretty deep dives, kind of levels off and slowly climbs back up. I gather you're confident that this DC reserve is going to be at an appropriate level moving forward, even with, in the grand scheme of things, when you look at what the DC reserve has been at, this is small change, although it's almost $5 million. But I gather you're very confident that this is not going to put any additional strain on the DC reserve?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey, great question. So this particular reserve of the DCs is for recreation services. It's a soft service. So I can tell you, if you look at the DC study, there are way more wants and needs than we are actually allowed to collect. The funds are available. We have them in the bank. So to answer your question, it's not really going to impact this amount of going forward. I think it's just the going forward, the bigger recreational needs that Council has identified. We have to kind of manage those. So no, this won't. I'm confident this won't have a major impact.
Okay, great. Thank you. Because obviously, I'm also looking out for my colleague at the far left here, because there's two rec centers in the wind, and obviously the one in the southeast is first in the pipeline, and I just wanted to make sure that it's not going to cause any additional strain or potential delays when it comes to getting our next rec center up and running too. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Are there any, Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thank you. I'll be very quick. I'll support the amendment, but I will like to talk at the end on the amendment. You may motion. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? It carries. Councillor Harris, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. One thing that I wanted to touch on, and I do hear my colleagues around the table. I understand where people are positioned, and I respect my colleagues and what they've said. But again, recognizing the importance of the issues that have been raised, and I think the environmental issues, the impact on the trees and the area is important. So I think what I understand and hear from staff is that is central to this effort. That is key to this moving forward. One thing I just wanted to maybe help some context, and I forgot to ask the first time, was, this, the use of the turf is to extend the season. So again, to make a better investment, it's used longer into the winter or the late fall, and it's used earlier in the spring. Maybe through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Mr. Bell, what is the expected month to, it would open in month X and go to month Y? What is the expected opening season for this?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, the normal fields open, like the grass fields open on May 1st, and we generally keep them open as late as possible in the season until October. Depends a lot on the weather. An artificial turf field can extend the season on either side, but again, it depends on the type of weather we get. Snow, obviously, encumbers the usage of the field and would require snow removal. But certainly it does extend the life of the playing time.
Great, thank you. And I think, and for the residents, I think one of what I would have heard if I was a resident concern was that it's good news it's not active for 5 months a year. If I'm kind of extrapolating the 7 from if there's 5 that it won't be active. I mean, it's as a consolation. I just wanted to also touch on the environmental, and there's a lot of information about the turf versus grass. I remember we talked about it before. I'm a fan of Barrie's grass. Barrie does grass really well. I've had the pleasure of being around Ontario, whether it be soccer fields and baseball diamonds, and our grass is second to none, so congratulations to you and your staff. So I like the idea of a grass field. But I understand, and I read the report, I understand that, but one thing I'd also had been highlighted to me, I wasn't aware, as far as runoff and the impact of stormwater. Am I correct that I heard, and I don't know if it's through you, Mayor Nuttall, this is Mr. Bell again, I'm not sure, or Ms. Banfield, that it's actually better, given its location close to Kempenfelt Bay, it's better to be synthetic. We can control the water better with this type of application than if it was a grass field?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harris, so certainly the lack of water usage that you need to fertilize or to water an artificial turf, including the runoff, and it was already mentioned the lack of fertilizer. There's definitely some benefits to the use of it this close to Lake Simcoe.
Okay, thank you. And again, in respect to the residents and the emails that I've received, they've all been read. The calls that I've had have been picked up, and I see the Facebook posts and I see the interest, but I also understand where this as an opportunity for our city lies. And full disclosure, most who know me, I love sports. Sports is a big part of my life and experience of living, growing up in Barrie. So Queen's Park was the place for fastball and softball, and Dunlop was the place for hockey and lacrosse and indoors. So, you know, far be it for me to get in the way of the opportunity for young people to experience playing what I think would be a highlight, playing on the lakeshore on an incredible field. But I do think it's really important for us to really have the pause to think about the impact in this area. It is something very significantly different, and trying to manage the expectations and of a variety of different uses. I think I'm pleased that the path won't be altered. I think that was important. I heard that from people. So yeah, it's a really tough one for me. I won't deny. As far as youth goes, I mean, people know I was the one who brought forward the Community Recreation Fund because I wanted organizations to have funds to be able to improve recreation. I know the importance of healthy activities on young people, and the more we can encourage activity in today's world, especially when social media and smartphones are taking far too much of our youth's attention, and getting outside and playing is actually an antidote to that, and it's an antidote to depression, anxiety. It's better for your health. Get outside. If you can do anything for your health, get outside. So I'm really conflicted on my residents. I hear you and understand you, but also I see the Sea Cadets, I see the risk, I see the opportunity in that site. That's another part of it. I see the soccer, I see the opportunity for, and I've had residents reach out more quietly, but reach out about, hey, this would be great. My kids play lacrosse, my kids play soccer, and this is really, really exciting. So, you know, we'll hear more next week. We know that people will be here with their deputations for and against, which I look forward to. There's a full week of activity and opportunities to speak to all of us, so I encourage you to do that. So thank you, Mayor Nuttall, for the opportunity to just kind of share some thoughts. I appreciate the dialogue from the colleagues.
Any other questions or comments from members of committee? Seeing none, I just wanted to speak to the residents in the area that are immediately surrounding this. About half of the area surrounding this. In fact, I would probably say that the closest area to this, I represented for 8 years on council. It used to be Ward 10 over in Minette's Point. It changed over to Ward 8. And I'll tell you this, one of the concerns that I've heard is the noise over at the field. And I want to speak to that directly. When I was on City Council, one of the projects I got to work on was helping to bring the GO train back to the City of Barrie. One of the downsides of bringing the GO train back to the City of Barrie was that there was a law that said every time a train went through an intersection in an urban area, it would toot its horn. Mayor Aspin, you probably remember this debate we had, and it would do it 3 times. So at 6 a.m. and 6:15 and 6:45 and 7:30, and then at 5 o'clock in the evening, at 6 o'clock in the evening, so on and so forth. There would be horn blasts going not just into that area, but right across the lake. We were getting complaints in Councillor Rietma's ward from those horn blasts. And we made the change. We applied to the federal government to make the change so that those horns did not have to be blasted every time a train went through those intersections, only when there was a threat of some sort of injury or somebody being in the way or something being in the way. And because of that change, you don't have those types of impacts in your life today that could have been there. That is a different subject than a bunch of kids playing in a park, for me. a totally different subject. And so when I look at it as mayor, I got to look around the whole city. You know, I grew up in Allendale and Painswick. Used to skateboard down that path to the skate park downtown far too often. I've spent my entire growing up in the Gables, another beautiful area just down the street, and this location, the South Shore. Councillor Hamilton grew up down the street from this. You know, we have to bring all of the different interests in and take what I see to be a lot of different special interests, quite frankly, asking for different things. And then we've got to weigh it, and we've got to make an informed, educated decision and move forward from there. And so these aren't easy decisions. It may sound easy because folks have now decided which way they're going to go, but it's taken a lot of time and effort from members of council to weigh out these things and come up with a decision. So I want to thank members of council for doing that in such a respectful manner, especially tonight. I understand the difficult position that Councillor Harris is in. And finally, I want to do this. I want to say thank you to our public servants, because I'll speak for myself and not the rest of council. I'm not always easy to work with or for, and I know that. But the work you've done in between has been absolutely incredible. It's now explained in a way that whether folks are in favor of it or against it, they understand what's being proposed. And it's been done to try to mitigate the impacts on the community around it. And so I just really want to say thank you for that, because I was more critical prior, and I'm less critical today, not critical at all. I think you've done a heck of a job on this. So Ms. Banfield, Mr. Bradley, team, Ms. McAlpine, Mr. Hughes, Mr. Bell, all of the folks who contributed in your departments, no matter what the outcome is, you have done incredible work on this subject, and I think it's work that we can be incredibly proud of going forward, so thank you for that. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the motion as amended on the floor, and it carries. The second vote we'll move right into is from the field to the South Shore Centre. And I can't remember who held that piece, if I can just look. Well, I got to do the main motion as amended.
Jim Harris.
We already voted, yeah. Okay, so we've already voted on both the main and the amended. And Councillor Harris, you held the South Shore Centre.
Yeah, I'll put that motion on the floor as printed, and I think the conversation has been held, so I don't think I have anything else to add on the South Shore relocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Are there any other questions or comments with regards to South Shore? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. Members of the public, if you were here for these discussions, what's been approved this evening is the moving of the cadets from downtown to the South Shore Community Centre alongside parading ground and sports field to the east of the Military Heritage Park. If you would like to speak to this subject in the future, next week, please get a hold of our clerk in the next, 4 days? In the next 4 days, and you'll be able to come and make a deputation either in favor or against. And I'll now ask that you can stay if you'd like to, but I'm sure lots of you don't want to stay, so feel free to leave, and we'll just take a 1-minute break here. Okay, members of council, we're going to proceed with the meeting now. If you're not supposed to be down in the area, please remove yourself, and we will get back into the meeting. If we can get quiet, please, at the back. Members of committee, I just want to highlight you have a pair of McHappy Day socks. I had the opportunity to go today and bought one for each member of council. I expect to see you wearing them each and every week. But in all seriousness, just want to remind folks that McHappy Day's on today. The proceeds have been going to both Ronald McDonald House in Toronto, which helps the entire region, but also to the RVH for the neonatal and prenatal clinics there, which need an expansion heavily. And so if you get the opportunity to leave this meeting and go to McDonald's, I know it's going to an incredible cause today, and we'll certainly deal with your appetite for you after this meeting. So we'll now go to the next piece of business that we have here, and I believe, Councillor Corser, you were the first. Councillor Harvey, you were actually the first, and I skipped right past you. So I apologize, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and I'm sure the two involved in this sitting in the crowd are appreciative that their item didn't get missed until the end of the meeting as they were patiently waiting through a very long debate. So I'll put the item on the floor as printed, and I do have an amendment. So my amendment's been circulated in amongst all the other amendments ahead of time by staff, and that would be to remove, in the first sentence, to remove the word denied and replace it with approved in compliance with the decision and direction from the Ministry of Transportation, and then to also add paragraph 2, that all other provisions of the sign bylaw be applied, and I can speak to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. This really is a testament to the amount of work that you've done. I know you're pretty low-key on it and don't like people pumping your tires, let's say, but you've done a lot of work on this file, and that's why we tried doing what we did last week, but because of technicalities, we weren't allowed to reverse the direction on the motion, and that's why it had to come back again this week for, I guess, almost a third time now. But the reality of it is they've got an MZO. We're getting the sign whether we like it or not. That's the reality of it. And I know you've done everything in your power to make the best of it and have gotten us advertising opportunities that otherwise wouldn't have been attained. And that's why I think it's in everybody's best interest to just approve it, because like I said, with the MZO, we're getting it whether we want it or not. At least this way the City of Barrie is getting something in return when it comes to some advertising to be able to promote the city, and especially from a tourism perspective, to hopefully attract people into the city while they're driving north, and hopefully caught in traffic while they're watching this, so they can then divert off of the highway and start spending some money at our shops, whether they're filling up their tank with gas or having a quick lunch because they're fed up of sitting in traffic while they're driving to the cottage. But those are my comments, and I'd be interested to see what my colleagues around the table have to say.
Thank you. And Councillor Rietma, is it okay if I respond to your question before you ask it? I knew where you were going, sir. So Councillor Rietma was previously asking about what are the actual details of us being able to get advertising. So all I have back from the minister is that they will work it out for us that we get advertising. They haven't had, he has not had the time to go into the actual details as of yet. So that's, we have that in writing from him, that he'll help to make sure it happens, but that doesn't have the time to deal with this specific advertisement on a sign in Barrie yet. I'll go to you and then I'll say what I think afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for that clarification. the amendment confuses me a little bit because it says it'll be approved in compliance with the decision and direction from the ministry. But the staff report says that the ministry's decision or order says in it that the sign must meet the bylaw of the city. So if we're approving this, then the sign isn't approved because it can't meet the direction of the city, of the minister. So I'm a little confused by that.
Madam Clerk, can you help us? I know that I was the one who asked for the actual verbiage to be in there, but can you help us?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Rietma. I was taking it upon the conversations that Mayor Nuttall had had with the ministry, because we had the indication that we would have some Barrie, welcome to Barrie, for lack of a better term, signage. So that's what I was alluding that to, with the compliance and direction of the ministry. But we can fix the wording if it raises concerns with members. Like, we can amend the wording if it raises concerns with members of council.
Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I'm kind of inclined to support the wording here because then we don't get the sign as far as the way I read it. Yeah, I'll leave it for that. I have other comments, but that's the part that I don't get.
If I would say that if we didn't approve it, we wouldn't get the sign, but if we did approve it, the bylaw related to this site would actually be to allow the sign. So it would then therefore confirm, right? It would be in line because the vote itself would change that.
Well, the way I read the amendment is that it's still has to be in compliance with the direction of the ministry. And the direction of the ministry was that it has to meet local sign bylaws. That's what I got from the staff report.
Does the amendment, yes, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. We could change the wording on it to remove some ambiguity to it, per se, but I'll be quite honest with you. The fact that the MZO exists, I believe, is contrary to what Councillor Rietma is reading into this wording, because once you've got an MZO, you're full steam ahead.
I don't want to create a dialogue, Mr. Mayor, but
that's what this table's for.
It's not an MZO, it's a ministerial order. So there's quite a difference there. And maybe I could direct my question to Ms. McAlpine. I think she's the one that wrote the report. I think one of the paragraphs in her report said that the minister's order says that it still must meet local bylaws.
Ms. McAlpine.
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Rietma, I did not write the report. Mr. Forgrave, who is behind me, did write the report. I believe that I did review and approve the report from my level, and that information is correct. And Mr. Forgrave, if you have any further information that you wanted to add, please feel free to jump in.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Rietma. The minister's order, when I reviewed it, provided an exemption to the setback from the highway corridor. Generally, it's 400-meter setback, and they shortened that to 14, I believe it was. That was the only exemption that was in the minister's order, and it does state, each billboard shall meet all requirements of the local municipality and any other agency having jurisdiction at the time of installation.
Go ahead.
With that being said, I will amend my amendment to what I attempted to change the wording to last week and just change the word denied to approved.
So you've withdrawn your amendment and you've put the approved
I
on the
will,
floor.
I will put the new, yeah, I'll withdraw that first amendment, and then I will put a new amendment on that just changes the word denied to approved, and then add that second paragraph, that all other provisions of the sign bylaw be applied. However, I just want a little bit of clarity from the clerk on that piece, just because of, is there any other issues within the sign bylaw that this could create that, I just don't want to cause something that's going to create us an issue down the road.
Madam Clerk.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey, I don't believe so, but I would defer to Mr. Forgrave, just in case I'm missing something.
Through you, Councillor Nuttall, or sorry, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Harvey. The exemption currently includes several requests on size and zoning requirements. Outside that, other than the potential that was raised last week of similar requests coming down the pipe, there's nothing in the bylaw that would be impacted later on that I can see.
Great, thank you. So I'll leave my amendment as I had just stated then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, Councillor Rietma, I know you're now going to want to speak to the new amendment.
Yes. And my comment is going to be the same as last week, and that is that the amendment is contrary to the motion that's before us. And so the amendment is inappropriate, not the section, not the second section, but
we've actually had quite the debate on this, the clerk and I. Turns out she was right. I was right also, and we said completely different things. So you could also interpret that we were both wrong. But at council, there's one set of rules that allows, only for smaller amendments to take place, not a complete contravention of what was previously approved. At general committee, you can do whatever you like. And so we're at general committee, and therefore, Councillor Courser can do whatever she likes.
okay. Well, thank you. That clarifies things, and I'm pleased with that. I'm happy to speak against the proposed amendment. I think that the first thing that I would say is that the ministry has 23 of these sites, I believe, and this one is certainly unique. It's in the city, it's very urban, it's close to interchanges, and so I think it's well worth our while to say, hey, this is different and you can't apply the same rules as you're applying to the other 22. And the purpose of a sign is for people to look at it. If you don't have anybody looking at it, then what's the point of having a sign? And that's why they want this sign, and they want it twice as high and 50% bigger than what we permit. And I think that's a problem in driving through an urban area. We don't need any more distractions on our highways than we already have. We also, from a societal point of view, I don't think anybody around this table or in this city really needs to buy more stuff or needs to be told to buy more stuff. I think we already have that, and I think we have far too many signs already. And I don't think the view from the road is a public view, and we don't want to be cluttering it with a private interest. The other part of it is that I think that sign will really set the character or the sort of the view of our city. And I'm not sure that really is what we want, a big sign. And I'm concerned that if we agree to this, that Lowe's, Rona, the next guy down the road is going to say, well, you approved that one, we want you to approve ours as well. And I'm quite prepared for the minister to say, you know what, City of Barrie, I don't really care. I'm going to amend my order, and you're going to get that sign whether you want it or not. Because then, if there's somebody else that wants a sign, we can say to that person, go see the minister. And I think that's a preferred route for us. I don't think we need more signs along the highway, frankly, and we certainly don't need a big one like this. So I'm not going to be in favor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Corser.
I just wanted to say here, and ditto on absolutely everything Councillor Rittman said, because he took every word out of my mouth. I agree. I worked in digital advertising for 18 years, and we are inundated constantly with ads. And the idea that $16,000, I believe it was, for whatever second ad on a highway, and it being shaped as a local business thing. I don't know too many local small businesses that can afford $16,000 for a spot on a sign. I do not like this idea. I don't like the precedent that it sets, and I agree that if we around the table accept it and we vote on it, it does open the door for other businesses to come back to us. And like Councillor Rittman said, I believe that we need to stand our ground and say no. So when it does get shoved down our throat, then we can say it was forced upon us. It wasn't something that we voted for. We fought against it. And so it does not open the door for precedent for other people to come in, other businesses to come in, other advertisers to come in and ask for the same type of deal. And I just don't support this in any way whatsoever. And I would like to have some real clarity around the amendments, because I'm not sure with the confusion of the amendments to deny, approve. If we deny, it'll be this. If we approve, it'll be that. It'll be opposite effect. I'd really like a lot of clarity, layman's terms, about what I'm voting on before I vote on it on these amendments as well, because it is very confusing to me.
Councillor Corser, I can give you that clarity right now. What the vote is on in terms of the amendment would be to change the wording to approve the sign. So the amendment will be, do you support changing it to approve it? Then on the main motion, we'll have to wait on the outcome of the amendment prior to, or before we are able to determine what the main motion will be, and I can provide clarity at that point.
Okay, so the amendment right now is so we vote for the sign.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. I thought the staff recommended.
You're voting for this sign if you vote on
Okay, following, yes, okay, thank you.
Councillor Morales, then Councillor Hamilton, then Councillor Kungle, then Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I wish the kids had stuck around for the beauty of local government about the sign. I didn't think that would get laughs. See the people from on route? You never know what happens at council. That was one of my worst ones. Okay, so I made a couple notes here. Councilor Reba and I both agreed at a meeting actually a couple months ago, I forget how many months, as General Committee Council, in regarding to the fact that our design bylaw needs a revamp. And that wasn't implied, it was explicitly said, like it is outdated. There's an item for discussion that went to the Mayor's Task Force, Mayor Nuttall, from Councilor Reba, endorsed by Councilor Reba, to review the sign bylaw. Now, it doesn't say that it needs to be more or less, so I don't want to mischaracterize it, but that it be reviewed, because it was outdated, and it's been a while. That means it could probably go either way, more rules, less rules. So I guess I'm speaking to you, I'm speaking to the people from En route. I agree with the fact, and I'm sure I'll support that item if it keeps going down the pipeline, that we need to review it. And the reality is, the sign that we have this image of, the sun-faded paper sign, that's gone. That's like 20, 30-year technology. The paper came a long way, and now the digital signs. I was slightly, not concerned, but I looked at it with curiosity a couple of years ago when they started going up around our local area in the GTA. And I've heard it from some members of council, and I've heard it again. Go look at the Innisfil sign. Go look at the one in the GTA. GTA. And the way you've engineered the angle, the lighting, it works. Plain and simple for me. Obviously, these are all my personal comments. Mayor Nuttall, this is kind of what I have to think about when I decide my vote. Right now, we have a digital sign on top of the building on Bayfield Street and Ferris Lane. And that sign, A, is very unintrusive, Mayor Nuttall, but it is literally less than 100 meters from residential. And yet, that sign is there and it's approved. And yet, somehow, theoretically, if council were to reject the sign, there's no residential housing for quintuple that distance, and the angle, even if there was, there's even no chance of light emitting. So, absolutely no concerns from that. And Mayor Nuttall, I just want to say this comment to the people from ONRED. By the way, both of you, great presentations before, and clarity to some of our questions. We don't own your building. We don't own the view, and I said that in quotations, of your building. And we definitely don't own the perceived value of whether there's character or not. And that really bugs me. And all members of council are entitled to say their opinions, totally support that. But I just want you to hear from a younger voice, not as young as the kids on the soccer team that showed up, but somebody who I think kind of gets it. And we'll see where the vote lies, because I can't speak for everybody. But I think that Barrie is ready for appropriate solutions, and I know that a lot of work has gone into this. But yeah, I definitely don't believe in anything like a heritage view on a highway. That's just, and finally, not contrary to my last name, in line with my last name, Mayor Nuttall, I'm not going to apply a morality lens to this item specifically. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Nuttall. I spoke very briefly the first time this was presented in support, and I was a bit alarmed or stunned by the amount of conversation that took place. And I didn't speak to it last week because I thought I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen to the folks that are feeling in opposition to this and feeling this is something we really don't need. I met with residents in my area as well and my community council, and I'm trying to understand where the resistance is coming from, and I'm just falling short. So I am going to take a minute to speak to it because I haven't spoken to it really since it was first brought to us. I've heard issues of safety and signs being deemed distracting. I am not in a position to challenge MTO's safety standards on the road. I recently drove down south back to Barrie. I drove through Niagara Falls, through Grimsby. I had to make a pit stop in Cambridge. I drove through Kitchener. I drove through King. There's signs everywhere. There's a number, not even these signs just at the en routes, but they're all over the place. I mean, distracted driving. I mean, talk about texting and driving. Talk about driving under the influence. Signs exist, they're out there. And I mean, who are we to challenge the MTO standards on safety when it comes to signage? So that to me it's just a moot point. I would say the other one in terms of, it changes the look and feel of our city. The look and feel of our city is changing. I mean, the fairgrounds is going to change the look and feel of our city, I think, in a positive way. There's other things that I think are looking and changing the feeling of our city in a negative way. We all just got pictures of the park, Milligan Pond, and I've seen Birdsey Park as well. There's drugs and paraphernalia. I mean, there's so many other things going on that I think we should be spending airtime on. And I will say I'm cringing a little bit at the amount of time we're spending on this sign. I drove at night through Barrie to the en route, and I would actually say, I think the sign will provide some nice lighting. You can't even really see it when you're on the highway driving, whereas when King in Innisfil, if you look at the signs, it says 24 hours, 24/7 open, and it was a great marking when I was driving at night to say, oh, there's my gas station. So I actually think it will look quite nice there on the en route. And I think we're also missing the whole intent of what you came and presented on, is the rationale behind consistencies in these boards, whatever they are, signs across the province as well. So I think we've missed that in this little conversation about looks and feels and safety. So I don't know. I think we've lost track. I think this is, blown up into something that it probably shouldn't have. I really appreciate what you were trying to do with the province to actually say, can we get some benefit here? So I think that is great headway, and I'm glad we took it back to take that time. But otherwise, I know from my residents, let's get on with it. There are bigger things that we should be discussing at this table, and a sign for me is just not one of them. So I hope we can vote tonight and put this to rest and move on.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Kungle?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I will not be supporting the amendment. Again, I think for me, it's just the point of, staff laying it very clearly out around this being an overall height of double what's permitted in our bylaws, and the overall sign of approximately 50% larger than what is permitted in our bylaws. And so, while again, thank you for looking at, best case scenario, if this is going to go, can we get some revenue in advertising? I think that is, you're working within the scope of the mayor's office. I think you're doing what's best for the city, and I appreciate that, regardless of whether or not this is going to go forward. For me, I think it's important to be able to still have a position and be clear to the public about what my position is. So I won't be supporting it. I'll support the staff recommendations not to approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Kungle. And Councillor Harris?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Unlike the South Shore issue, I have had actually no contact from residents. But anyway, and I apologize, Ms. Teed-Murch, of all the things that I did this week, I did not reply to you, so I apologize for that, as that is not my general practice. So, and is anybody else hearing the song Signs going through their brain? Or am I you too young for that? There you go. Breaking my mind, right, is one of the lines. I think, I'm not sure. I appreciate, the sense of a moral victory. I don't know if it's actually something that we really want to aspire to. And, the sign, I think we have a couple things that I think we're talking about, but I don't know if we're talking with great certainty. Maybe we can't get there. But, it's been, I think it was First Deputy Mayor Thompson, and I know Councillor Harvey highlighted the fact that the minister has the authority, we believe, to make this happen. So with that noted, if that's the case, then we're going to get a sign, signs everywhere, a sign, I apologize. Can we get something from this? And we did task our mayor, who's a busy guy who has a big capacity, so he doesn't mind adding tasks to his day. He went and saw if we could get something from this. So thank you, Mayor Nuttall. So I'm not a big pro, big con sign person. The last time we had a sign issue in Ward 8 was related to signs by the rail by Tiffin and Innisfil, and they haven't been, there was a few people upset, but they have not been an issue. They've not been a concern. So where I land on this, I guess, is the issue around precedent, and maybe through you, Mayor Nuttall, I don't know if this is a fair question to answer, but is the sense, of us setting precedent something that is easily managed such that this is not going to give us a flood of signs everywhere, a sign in the near future?
Say that 3 times fast.
I can't. You know me. I can't.
You just got demoted to councillor, Ms. McAlpine. Okay. Ms. McAlpine.
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Harris. With the current sign bylaw, which is under review, but that is the basis of what we're working with right now, if there were requests that were similar in nature, ones that were significant deviation from what is permitted in the bylaw, and staff would be denying the request the ability for it to be considered a minor variance because it's significant, and the proponent could bring it forward or request that it be brought forward to council for an exemption to the bylaw, similar to this case. So there certainly is the potential for a number of other businesses to be seeking exemptions, to have much larger signs than are what are currently permitted in the bylaw. And that would be at council's discretion whether or not it provided an exemption. However, it does get a little bit, it will always be used as an example that you did it here, why can't we have it in another location? It will be specifically with council at this time until the bylaw is reviewed, if they exceed those limits. But you will get pressure that you've done it once, why can't you do it elsewhere? And that will be up for council's decision on whether or not they accept it on the basis of the specific circumstances at the time. Is it in the right location? Are there other concerns? So each of those, council will weigh on its merits.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and thank you, Ms. McAlpine. I think with that understanding that we retain the right to make decisions in the future, we're not going to be held to some precedent that we have to then repeat after repeat. It will be used against us. It'll be an argument that is presented, but then we get to then make decide, and we can then decide if the context is similar, same, or quite a bit different. And the minister order, I think, is what I understand from the conversation that we've had over a number of meetings. Is it really the trump card, or the real differentiating factor between this and any other sign that might come forward? It's also, is it other factors that this is on, who owns the land? This is not, is that a factor? Is this provincial owned land?
Mayor Nuttall, through to Councillor Harris, the lands are owned provincially, and they're also within the ministry's jurisdiction, or typical jurisdiction as it relates to signs, which is different than in some other cases. And if council had an application from somebody else for an exemption, that might be a differentiating factor if someone was making that request and council didn't feel it was appropriate because it was actually within distance of residential neighborhoods or was within the heart of the city, and council felt it wasn't an appropriate exemption from the sign bylaw.
Okay, thank you. I think with that, that is that for me, that real differentiating factor, both provincial land, not within it's not ours, and appreciating that if the likelihood is that we will have this sign, and they are not like the signs you see down I-95 that, they're just, this is actually, these signs do look good. I will give credit to that. They are well designed. And Mayor Nuttall, given the fact that you have made an effort to make something of this, we've talked about this. That was part of my discussion. I think this location is different than the other 23, respectfully, and which has allowed us to get you to make that point on our behalf to get something from this. So I really prefer the outcome of getting something and not getting the sign with nothing. And so I can't imagine in good spirit that if we said no, that they would come back, oh, by the way, we forced a sign on you, we're going to give you something for it. I don't think that would be reasonable to expect as a fair partner in this. So, with that noted, I don't have a strong objection against it. We're going to have this sign. Let's get something from this sign, and thank you for making the efforts to get us something.
Thank you. Councillor, let me just make sure, Harvey, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Just a little follow-up to that. I do appreciate Ms. McAlpine's responses there, and I think and obviously I was not in favor of this a couple of weeks ago, and obviously I've flipped here, and for various reasons, and there is a huge differentiating factor on this one opposed to any other sign that could be requested within the city. As it's been just highlighted, it's provincial lands, but also too, it faces a provincial highway that we have no control over. Whereas any sign that would come to us on any of our major corridors within the city is a very different conversation, because now it's within our city limits and facing our city streets. And then obviously, I think we need to maintain our sign bylaws much stricter when it's within our built boundary and within our jurisdiction, whereas this is a totally different scenario. And that's the only reason that I've totally done a 180 on this one, and obviously because of some of the work that you've done behind the scenes to be able to secure the city some additional revenue, or not revenue, but advertising space that we otherwise wouldn't have had. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll be real quick. I'll be supporting the amendment. If anybody's traveled down the highway, the design of these signs it's really well. Like, unlike you, I'm old enough to remember when the signs turned, and that was distracting, where I used to stop because I wanted to see the next advertising, and that was probably a lot more distracting. But they're designed in the way they actually do the job. The advertising's on the highway, the illumination's on the highway. If you go to the one just outside of the city limits, 0 lights are in the back parking lot. So for the residential that people are worried about, the signs have moved a long way. Technology, energy efficient, LED lights, all that stuff. So I will be supportive of it, but I do appreciate the effort to get something out of it, because in all fairness, we are a little bit different. We're not as rural, and the surrounding signs, the other signs, will probably eventually look like Barrie one day, but today they don't, and it's nice that we're going to get a little victory from that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members of committee? Okay, seeing none, I will use this analogy that I use all the time with the province, and that is, mom and dad are telling us something, and if I can use the analogy that from my last night talking to my children, was clean your room. And sometimes when parents are tired of saying the same thing, they say, if you clean your room, we'll do X. You'll get an ice cream. And I think that's what's being said. We pushed back. We've asked the question. And I hope that Papa Prab's going to take us for ice cream, and I hope that we get the advertising that we've discussed. And I think that this is too small of an issue to argue about with all of the major issues we have that the province is working with us on. So that's the provincial piece. The other piece I would say is this, is that I hear it's provincial land, provincial highway in front of it, and it's also a provincial request. And so if the other billboard companies and go out and they come back and they say, I want a billboard that matches what they did over there, my first answer to them would be go and get the province as a partner and get them to tell us to do it. Because if they're able to do that, I'd probably have the same conversation we're having today. I'm guessing they won't be able to do that. And the reason for that is the province, we heard what they're trying to do is they're trying to create uniformity on messaging if there's an issue that needs to be dealt with. I don't love all of that because, as I said in the initial meeting, I don't want to see people redirected through our city streets when they're sitting on the highway. But I also have to respect that other levels of government are given the responsibilities that they are, and this is a request that they have. So with that, I will call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment? And it carries. On the main motion is amended, so this next vote is again in favor. You'd be voting, if you're voting in favor, it's for the sign. If you're voting against, it's against the sign being put in place. So all those in favor of the...
Madam Clerk, sorry, point of clarity. Because the report is staff do not recommend it, so if we vote in favor and it passes, then we're voting not to recommend.
No, the amendment has been put in place and already adopted.
Perfect, okay, thank you. That's
okay. So all those voting in favor would be voting in favor of a sign. If you're voting against, you're voting against putting the sign. So what he said, all those in favor. And it carries as well. Councillor Corso, you held FRG 4, and the floor is yours.
I guess I put it on the floor as amended, I suppose, for process, but I am going to hold my questions until we have different staff in the room, because I would hate to put anyone on the spot who does not have answers.
So could I get a motion to defer the motion from responsible, finance and responsible government, is that where it came from? For is it 2 weeks? Do we have a meeting in 2 weeks? We don't have a meeting in 2 weeks.
Mayor Nuttall, our next general committee meeting is May 29th.
To the 29th of May, is that something you'd like to put on the floor there, Councillor Corser?
Yes, please.
Perfect. It's deferred by Councillor Corser to May 29th. All those in favor of the deferral motion? It's approved. We'll now move on to, I believe, Councillor Harvey.
FRG 5, the community project.
Sorry?
No. We have the community project fund submission from Councillor Morales, and Councillor Morales held it.
Defibrillator, you asked me to hold.
I fast-forwarded past two of you. I apologize.
No worries.
Okay, so FRG 5,
Yeah.
there's a, do you have the amendment or no?
The amendment just for it to be approved. Are you asking me to put it on the floor as printed? You asked me to.
Sorry, if you put it on the floor as printed, I'm just going to check in with the clerk, sorry. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, the staff were asked to report back on this matter. They provided a memorandum, which is attached to the general committee agenda, providing the additional information that was requested. So since there's not a staff report with a recommendation, the thought was just to amend this recommendation because it came to the same meeting. So to either approve, deny, or receive the item. So those are the three options that you have.
And as it stands right now with the current motion on the floor, does that approve, deny, or refers it back to
It
staff?
just was a referral back to staff, and staff have reported back, so we can just amend this motion to reflect whatever decision council would like.
So Councillor Morales, it needs an amendment in order to get approved.
Yes. So thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll put it on the floor as printed, and I'll move an amendment right away. It doesn't stifle discussion. Essentially, the amendment is to strike the words "and report back to general committee on May 8th, 2024, period, and replace it with "be approved, period."
The amendment is on the floor, that it be approved, or any questions or comments with regards to this motion? Oh, Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, just a little bit of clarity, just because further up in that same sentence that wasn't amended, it still has the wording referred back to staff in infrastructure and growth management. So I don't know if Councillor Morales wants to remove part of that because the referral is still contained in the sentence.
Good catch there, Councillor Harvey.
Great catch. I'll take that as a friendly. So I'll just repeat it for accuracy purposes. And thank you, Councillor Harvey. That the following be struck. Be referred back to staff in infrastructure and growth management for further information on other municipality practices with AEDS in parks, and report back to general committee on May 8th, 2024, and that be replaced with, quote, "be approved, period," end quote.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. We'll move on to the next item, which is Councillor Harris, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Committee.
I forgot I'd held that. This is through you, Mayor Nuttall. I was just curious. I know. Thank you, Ms. McAlpine. I had an email exchange. What is the expectation, next steps, as far as filling out the roster of organizations, representation, entities on this committee?
Mayor Nuttall, through you to Councillor Harris. The expectation is for council to select the names of the members of council that would be on the committee, put forward names of the members of council that would be on the committee, and then also put forward names of the organizations that would represent, where a representative would sit on behalf of those organizations for the sectors that the province has legislatively required.
Okay, thank you. And that's for later. Tonight is just approving the structure of what's in front of us, correct?
At this time, we'd need general committee to put forward the names.
So Councillor Harris, I think there was some conversation earlier, so I'm just going to jump through these. I potentially could have used the strong mayors to appoint members of council. I thought it was better to bring it here. I spoke with Councillor Kungle earlier. I think you did as well. So I would put forward Councillor Kungle's name. That's going to create a bit of a vacancy in another place, but we'll work through that. Is there a second name around the table that members of council would like to be involved in this committee?
If I may, if you're looking for nominations, I'd put forward.
So I'll take your nomination. I think there was a clarification over here, and then I'll jump across.
I actually just had a couple of questions that I was hoping to ask before we appoint, but I'm happy to go through appointment first, but I do have questions about the mandate and the objectives of this committee.
Okay, so
Do you want me to wait?
Could we go through the appointment of members, or is that going to change
Sure.
your?
No, if people are comfortable as it's written and they're fine to volunteer, sure. I would not be comfortable volunteering yet because I'm uncomfortable.
Okay, so are you saying it's something you'd like to volunteer
You know
for?
what? No.
Okay. Okay. All right.
But I still do want to ask my questions.
And you'll get to ask your questions for sure, Councillor. I jumped down that out that window, I guess I should say. So we'll come back in a second. Councillor Kungle, I think you had next request I saw.
I did, but maybe before that too. So if you have more than 2 councillors interested, what's the process? Because I don't want 2 to be identified and then people to hesitate saying that they're interested.
Councillor Corser?
I was going to put my name forward, but I appreciate that there's other councillors on the table that are much more qualified probably to be on this committee than myself, and I thought that they would be involved on this committee in a different capacity. So that is why I was going to put my name forward, but I didn't want to muddy the waters for somebody who would be much more qualified to take this role than me. So I just don't know who's going to be nominated. So
I'm going to read the table and say the following: that number one, we're going to have Councillor Hamilton ask her questions. We're going to hold off on the names. Ms. McAlpine, what's the date that we need the decision by?
Mayor Nuttall, there isn't a specific date that you need the decision by. There is a requirement for us to have completed a review and potentially any revisions by the summer of next year. So that doesn't give you as much time as you might think for something like this, but you do not have to make the decision this evening.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to propose to members of committee. Please get your questions together, and if it's okay with you, Councillor Hamilton, and everyone else, get your questions together. Get them all into Ms. McAlpine. Let's get all of the answers back. We've got 3 years. I wish we had 3 years. We've got 3 weeks to deferral to be able to get all of these things answered and back to be able to take a run at this with all of the information that's being requested, and members of council then considering whether they want to be a part of it. If we have more than 2 members who want to be part of it at that point, are we allowed to break into confidential for it?
Mayor Nuttall, you have a couple of options. You wouldn't move into a confidential session to select members of council because that's not personal information about identifiable individuals. You're members of council. But if you had 3 members who desperately wanted to be a part of this committee, you could choose to appoint more than 2.
Perfect. Councillor Hamilton, is that okay with you, or do you want to give us an indication of what the questions are tonight, or do you want to email them? It's up to you.
If I can I ask my question?
100%. It's on the floor.
I've talked about this with my council, and I just feel like, or my committee, I feel like I need to bring
Go
it
ahead.
forward. And I fully support the need for the committee. I think we've had discussions before about the community safety plan, and I think we could have probably done a better job in the oversight of the implementation aspects of it. I'm just confused because in the mandate it says the purpose of this committee really is to review the 2021 to 2024 plan and provide advice on any potential revisions and report on the plan. so it says to 2024. So is it really, and then under objectives, F, it says to produce a plan. So are we looking at the current plan, looking at what worked well, what did not work well, and then producing a net new plan? That would be 2025 to 2027 or 8. And what would that term be? Is it going to be just to the end of our council term? Or would it overlap with the next council term, where again, we probably get into the issue of new people come on council and have no idea that plan even exists, similar to myself, and I will take accountability. I had no idea, I'm a year into this, that this plan even existed. So the way I read the terms of reference, I'm just nervous that we're setting ourselves up for issues going forward. Even under meetings, it says once the plan is approved, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Committee meetings may be scheduled. There shouldn't be a may. If we're going to actually have appropriate oversight in the next implementation, again, there should be a committee that stands. It's not just, going to meet to revise it and come up with a new one and not meet again. There should be regular meetings, regular oversight, regular monitoring of the performance indicators and targets that are identified. So I'm just a little bit skeptical of everything. So I'm happy to put that in an email, but I think everyone should kind of be aware of what this committee is and what it isn't and what our whole intent with this is.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Mr. McAlpine, can you provide that information come in the next?
Or if you wish, I can answer tonight.
You can definitely, can you put it in writing as well?
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you want me to proceed tonight, so the legislative requirement is to review the existing plan, and then if there are revisions to the existing plan, to put those forward by next summer, 2025. That can be, revisions can be a totally new plan. In terms of the length of the plan, it cannot be longer than 5 years beyond 2025, but it would be up to the committee to recommend and council to approve. Certainly based on the experience, I think it would be a good idea to have a plan that aligns with council's term that will provide for a better opportunity for understanding and oversight of the plan and its objectives and the actions that are associated with it. In terms of the use of May, that was really the frequency of the meetings that are held after the, so once the plan's adopted, in the previous circumstance, the committee stood down. It didn't exist any further. In this case, the recommendation is for the committee to continue and potentially meet a couple of times a year. You probably would not need to meet monthly to review the plan, but you would need to meet semi-annually. Some of the, depending on the actions, you may need to meet more frequently.
Councillor Hamilton.
And I'm happy to put that in writing.
Thank you. Yeah, I would revise the terms of reference, but I can take all that offline.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have to be honest. I'm waning here, so I'm always scared of making bad decisions. So, is there a defer for 2 weeks motion from Councillor Rietma and Councillor Hamilton? All those in favor of deferral? Sorry, 3 weeks to the 29th. All in favor? I just didn't see hands. It's approved. Thank you. The next item, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll put it on the floor as printed, and I do have an amendment. Actually, to make it a little bit easier, I'll email it to everybody right now, just because it okay, didn't realize it was contained within that other, because I've got a separate email directly when we sorted it out. So it's to amend 1A to read Mayburn Street, south side from a point 35 meters west of Brown Bear Street to Kodiak Terrace. And to add paragraph 3, that staff and development services investigate the feasibility of removing the sidewalk on Andine Lane and report back to General Committee regarding the implications. And I can speak to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. This is, well, first I'm going to like to thank staff. We spent an hour and a half going through this yesterday and had a very fruitful conversation on this and one other issue that's ongoing in this subdivision. So this is the first subdivision where significant parking restrictions are being placed upon it, and it's going to be the new standard from what I understand moving forward as we grow out on the Hewitts and the Salem side. In saying that, so I'll speak to the first piece about the Mayburn Street. So Mayburn Street is the main thoroughfare that comes in off of Essa Road, and right now it goes maybe a quarter of a kilometer or so and hits a dead end. Eventually, whenever phase 2 of the development with a different developer is completed in a few years' time, it eventually will go out to Highway 27. So it's a 2-lane road. It is quite wide because the intent was to have bike lanes or multi-use lanes, whatever you want to refer to them as, along the side. What was being proposed by staff was to have Mayburn as no parking whatsoever. The reason I'm opposed to it, and I ended up spending my Saturday door knocking, and all but 2 residents on Mayburn disagreed with the direction of staff. They preferred to at least have parking on one side, however, past Kodiak Terrace, because as you pull in from Essa Road, there's townhouses at the beginning of it on these 2 side streets, and they're quite close, and there's quite a bit going on in the first little section of Mayburn. And I know some of the people are not parking far enough away from the corners, so once the signs are actually all fully erected properly, that should alleviate it, because I actually almost got T-boned myself when I was trying to pull out of Van Dien and making my left onto Mayburn. And it was just solely because there was cars lined, but they were not where they should have been. They were literally right at the corner of the road. I would be in favor of full bike lanes if this was a built-out area, but this is a bit of a secluded subdivision that is finally now getting a connection walkway to get them up to Athabasca, where the bus stop is. But in saying that, for them to even get through to this sidewalk extension, they have to walk through a pathway that goes around a water retention pond to get them to the side of Essa Road. Because on both sides of Essa Road right now, in the area where the subdivision is, it's ditches and no sidewalks. It's a very rural-looking road. And these bike lanes have no connectability to anything. So that's the reason for this one. And I just want to confirm with Ms. Banfield, I do have it by email, but I think it's important to have it on the public record. In regards to, because originally I was going to also bring forward part of an amendment about changing these bike lanes into urban shoulders, so that way it would have the ability to park. So with the amendment as it stands, because there are signs already up showing that bike lanes are coming, but the bike lanes aren't painted. So with this amendment, what exactly are we going to see on the side of Mayburn? Is it going to be a dedicated bike lane that people can park in, or is it going to be these urban shoulders that people can park in the way it is on Marcellus and Mapleton?
Through you, Mayor Nettle, to Councillor Harvey, with the amendment recognizing the 12.5 meter asphalt platform, we'd be able to create space for 2 travel lanes, one in each direction, a 1.5 meter bike lane in each direction, and a parking lane on one side of the street to allow parking on that one side.
Okay, so it would actually change the way the signage is now, because right now there's signage on both sides of the street indicating a single bike lane would be on either side of the road. So from what you're saying, I gather you're now talking about parking on one side and then a double bike lane on the opposite side. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Nettle, to Councillor Harvey, no, that's not correct. There would be a single bike lane on either side of the street. So it'd be unidirectional bike lanes, similar to other bike lane installations like Hearst Drive. But between the curb and the bike lane would be shifted off the curb, and there would be space for parking, like a parking lane would be created on that cross-section.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. I didn't realize the road was that much wider than Marcellus or Mapleton to be able to accommodate this. What would be the width difference then to be able to accommodate this extra lane and still allow parking? Because we're not able to accomplish that at Mapleton or Marcellus, and those appear to be very similar width to what is on Mayburn.
Through Mayor Nettle to Councillor Harvey, this cross-section was built to a legacy design standard, which included parking on the collector street. Sorry. We've since moved away from that through the secondary plan areas where we just have one lane per direction and bike lanes on our collector streets, or with the recent change last September to cycle tracks. So consistently across the secondary plan, staff's preference and recommendation would be to maintain that consistent parking approach. But on this specific segment, there is the option to employ this cross-section within the curb lines that exist today as constructed.
Okay, great, thank you. And then just to speak to the second piece of my amendment, the third paragraph that's being added about investigating the removal of the sidewalk. I'll be quite honest with you, I never thought I'd be sitting around this table even contemplating removing a sidewalk that is only a couple years old. Again, this is a first type of subdivision that was built the way it was built. Eventually, these townhouses will, they do face Essa Road now. However, it's caused a lot of confusion with residents because they think it's their backyard. However, site plan says otherwise. So we've got a whole other fence issue to deal with because some people have begun erecting, as of a couple years ago, fences that are much taller than 1 meter high, which is all you're permitted in your front yard. As a result of that piece of it, it ties in with this parking. So Andine Lane is the first laneway, and please correct me if I state anything wrong or inaccurate, Ms. Banfield, but I believe this is the first true laneway that was constructed in the city, so it's only 6 meters wide instead of your typical 7 meters wide. And as a result, with it being 1 meter narrower, the Ontario Building Code doesn't permit parking to be on that street. And that's why both of these streets are currently actually have the no parking signs up. However, they've been bagged and they've been unbagged, and there's been some issues with bylaw. Once this is all settled and a 30-day grace period, that should resolve itself. But where the sidewalk ties in with this parking issue is on Andine, on most days when you drive by, there's anywhere between 10 to almost 20 cars parked on both sides of the road because of the nature of the built form that people live in. On the one side facing Essa Road, they don't have garages. They have basically what I would call almost like a carport that'll fit 2 cars. The only amenity space they have, because in theory they don't have a backyard, they have a balcony that overlooks the driveway. Then on the opposite side where the sidewalk is, you have back-to-back towns that have single-car garages. However, they have no backyards because they're back-to-back products. So they have no ability to put a shed anywhere other than it would be on their front lawn, which would be against the bylaw, I assume. So once you put, let's say, a lawnmower or a snow blower in your garage, because it's the only place that you can put it, now you can't get a car in there unless you own like a Mini Cooper or a Fiat 500 maybe. And now that in a year's time, these much larger garbage bins are coming, that obviously when this subdivision was planned out, nobody even had a clue that this was the way we were going to be going, because this was all planned out in 2017 that thankfully predates my time here on council. And I know, like, even staff themselves, we don't have the same staff working for the city that actually even planned out this subdivision. But in saying that, these garages, normally they would use that garage to count as a parking spot, but when you look at it from a realistic standpoint, it's really not a parking spot because they have no backyards, they have nowhere to put even a lawnmower, and it's not a condominium, so they have to mow their lawns, so stuff's got to go somewhere, and that's where maybe these things weren't thought of at the time, but now they're being highlighted, and I hope moving forward we don't see these types of issues moving forward, especially as we're getting more density and stuff, and we have to kind of look at things kind of at a different lens, and obviously now that we know these bigger garbage cans are coming is another story. So that's the only reason why I'm contemplating it, was this sidewalk, especially with the sidewalk being on the back-to-back side. I'll be quite honest with you, I don't think it should be there. And it's on the opposite side of the road from where the streetlights are, which seems to be backwards. Whereas if we were to remove this sidewalk and finish it off with grass and extend the driveways, now all of a sudden the people on the west side of Andine have two parking spots like their neighbors on the east side. So again, it's not to say this it's going to get removed, but I want to at least have staff look at it as a possibility, because what's going to happen is as soon as these parking restrictions begin to be enforced, it's going to force these 10 to 20 cars that are typically on the street on Andine, and this has been an issue even during the winter time, that they're now going to be pushed onto their neighbors' side streets, and that's only going to cause some additional friction, I think, amongst neighbors, because now you've got somebody two streets away having to park their car there, or else you're going to be getting a fire route ticket every day. So those are my comments, and I hope members of council can support this moving forward, because in going through and knocking on every door on Mayburn and then leaving literature on those that weren't home on Saturday, I have had some of them actually call me back, but I've actually only had 2 people say that they didn't want parking on Mayburn. Everybody else said, we understand why there shouldn't be any parking close to Essa Road around Kodiak and going east, but everything to the west of that, everybody other than 2 people wanted at least parking on one side of the road.
Thank you, Councillor. Any, Councillor Kungle?
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. And to Councillor Gary Harvey bring the amendment forward, I'll speak to why I can't support it, but I do want to say in hearing you, and in any development in your ward, you always really try to work with the residents and do accommodate, trying to support better living and situational factors. So I recognize like the efforts to try and support them. Here's why I can't support any removal. I don't think, regardless of rationale, I guess the biggest question for me would be, if the sidewalk is built into this already the property design, are we not then gifting property back to a private part of the estate? So that would be something that if it comes back, I would want to understand. If the sidewalk was removed, how is that piece of the property then being utilized? But in general, when I think about things around, where we live on the plot versus also connected routes, thinking more about not just who's living in that house at the time, but the purpose of a sidewalk around connected communities and access routes and that. So I can't support the removal of a sidewalk. I think these are things that we're going to continue to see that are compounded when we look at dealing with different designs over time and how things change around how we live, be it the size of recycling bins or otherwise. I also can't support the removal, and correct me if I'm wrong, between the back and forth between Mr. Greatrix and your questions, Councillor Harvey, but my understanding through your amendment is that it is still a removal of both parking lanes on either side of that road. Is that correct? Maybe through you, Mr. Mayor Nuttall to Mr. Greatrix.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kunkel. The intent in the Transportation Master Plan and official plan was no parking on that street with a single lane of vehicle travel per direction with buffered bicycle lanes. This would be a modification to that.
Can you further clarify then, because I'm not clear about the different scenarios you talked through, is the amendment on the floor right now removing all bike lanes on Mardine?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kunkel, the amendment would eliminate the buffer. So instead of a 1.5 meter bike lane with a 0.5 buffer minimum, there's a bit more flexibility with this legacy platform to increase that. But that buffer would be removed, so it's just a 1.5 meter bike lane against the parking lane, against the vehicle lane.
Can we further clarify, regardless of distance and buffers and all of that, will someone be able to have a painted designated bike lane on either side of the road going in both directions?
Yes.
Okay. That I support, as long as we're not removing access to bike lanes in some way, shape, or fashion. So thank you for that clarification. So my only concern really is the sidewalk, and I'm not sure if you want to separate out your amendments by next council meeting, but right now, I can't support the amendment.
Councillor.
I will leave my amendment as is. I think I might have enough votes around the table, I hope. And if it fails, I'll separate them, but I would hope that they pass together, because I'll be quite honest with you, any member around this table potentially could be in this situation, and hopefully you're seeing the light.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I'll be supportive of the sidewalk, and for an interesting reason. Sidewalks are important. However, based on the compact form and the comments about the cars and the fact that, if you want more density, you got to accommodate the cars. Ideally, you want people to have less cars, but you got to make it work. So Councillor Harvey here is trying to make it work. And I also looked at an example, I think it's in Ward 6, basically Sean Mason's former site that he did in the mid-2010s. Members of council, if you want to go, I don't seem to be able to get an address here. The towns that went up in 2014, 2015. So I'm looking at that, members of council. Here, I'll get an address for everybody. I'll just drop the pin randomly here. Around 390 ESA, except the other side. So odd number around the 390 ESA. If you go there in that specific area and you drop on your choice of map, Apple or Google Maps, some of his built form actually doesn't have sidewalks in his road towns. Now, while they're not exactly the same, the ones on Andine don't have a garage door. They have kind of a, what did you call it, Councillor Harvey? Kind of just like a space. You had a specific word for it. Carport, yeah. So those are carport. These have doors. So they do look different, but they follow the same general concept design of not having backyards, having a bit of a step, which when done right can be really effective. When done poorly, we end up with fences on a main road. I'm looking here. So when you look on Apple View satellite, there's no sidewalk. It doesn't make these unsafe. These passed all the traffic studies. These passed all the requirements. What it does is it actually, because of how tight the townhouses are, it actually reduces speed, because we all know when you reduce the width and of a road and make it tighter, it reduces speed. So because these already exist and don't have a sidewalk, I have found a recent example on not having sidewalks being an acceptable and approved by our staff design built form. So Councillor Harvey, it's kind of odd, but on this one, in order to get more housing, you got to cut red tape. And in this, but not in general, sidewalks are not red tape, but in this specific situation, I see where you're coming from. And also, you're asking for an investigation. You're not asking for the removal of the sidewalk. So staff are, and I'm willing to listen to staff's perspective, they're going to come back with a memo. If they agree with you, they're going to say, we agree, but these are the possible concerns. And if they disagree with you, they'll come back and say, we disagree, and these are the reasons why. So I'll vote in favor, and I'll read the memo when it comes back.
Thank you, Councillor Morales. Councillor Corser.
Okay, I think that Councillor Morales made some clarity for me. It's rather late at night and my brain is rather fuzzy, and I hate loathe to muddle in another councillor's ward. I don't think that's very, around the table, we try to give each other as much respect and leeway as possible. But I really would like to have the opportunity to take a closer look at this before I make a decision on the amendment. And the amendment, if I'm correct, is for staff to come back with a report, and we can have further conversation at that point. Okay, thank you. All support, yeah.
Thank you. Can I just ask, include in that report, this isn't a one-way street, correct?
No, and that's where this laneway is unique too. It's the only laneway I've ever seen. I've seen many laneways in municipalities to our south. Typically they're one direction and they're like the width of 1.5 lane. This one's 2 lanes, and obviously because of, especially with our new garbage pickup, when the claw trucks come, they actually need both directions to be able to effectively pick up the garbage.
One Direction, my favorite band. Ms. Banfield, could you also include that why the city doesn't typically provide for any local one-way streets? Just strikes me if we have a width problem, if I had to choose between a sidewalk and going to one way, I'd probably choose going to one way. That's just me, but I just want to know the information. Maybe there's a really, really, really good reason why, and then we deal with what Councillor Harvey's been saying all along. Anyway, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The amendment carries on the main motion. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It carries. This might be our longest evening we've had at General Committee. I think that's the rest of the business for the evening. And we're going to go to inquiries. Are there any inquiries of our public service? Seeing none, we're going to go to announcements. Councillor Hamilton, I'm going to get you first. Councillor Harris second. Councillor Kungle third. Go ahead.
Sorry, I will try to be quick through you. I know it's 10 p.m. and this is my bedtime, so my eyes are closing. I did just we had our Ward 9-10 joint town hall last night, and I just wanted to give a huge kudos to staff. We had staff there from waste services, from transit, Barrie Police Services. I'm missing people, but they were just phenomenal. And so I did want to highlight that. The passion they showed, the willingness to come and give up 2 hours of their evening, meet with residents. They stayed late, they answered questions. I really was blown away. Even I thought I learned a lot. So I just want to say a huge thank you, and I hope you can pass that on to your teams. It's really appreciative. And I know our residents really appreciated having that one-on-one time with staff. So thank you. And on that note, I also just wanted to note, I do have a Ward 10 Advisory Council. We meet frequently to discuss issues that are relevant to Ward 10, but also broader city issues that impact everybody. We've just finished our first year on that council. We did a survey to get feedback on it. We've got 9 folks on it. 3 people finished their term, so I'm looking for 3 new people to join. So if you're in Ward 10 and looking to get involved and looking to have more input, please reach out to me, and hopefully you can join our committee going forward for this next term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Harris.
I'll be very fast. It's Children's Mental Health Week, so thank you for wearing your green ribbons. And kudos, Miss Banfield, rocking the green blazer. Thank you so much. First thing I noticed when I came in today, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you. I've got just 2 announcements, and they're just specific to this weekend. But before that, I just wanted to, someone doesn't like to toot his own horn over here, but I wanted just to say thank you to all those involved in the home runs for the Hungry, but in particular, and I think for those that were there and could hear you speak, Mayor Nuttall, you gave compliments to Councillor Nixon, and so do you know how much you raised as part of that? $30,000 for the food bank. So I know that takes a lot to organize, and many compliments around, while you like to sit in the background a little bit, just the impact you have around bringing community together. So I thought that deserves some credit.
Thank you, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's good.
You played awful.
That's the last time she compliments you, Councillor Nixon.
Listen, I hit the ball.
You
I
did.
hit the ball. Thank
Killer
you.
Congo.
I can hit a big cat. Here we go. But I do have two community announcements. So I believe Mayor Nuttall may be at the Farmers Market on Saturday for World Migratory Bird Day. But see? Yeah, it's still a thing. I wanted to invite the public out. And again, I think we had over 3,700 votes on that. So for those of you invested in this, Saturday is the day. Join us at 11 o'clock. And for those that can't make it, just, you know what, there's amazing things happening with Nature Barrie. And in addition to today and through the next month between the Chimney Swifts and other tours, there are so many free events that Nature Barrie hosts for the public at all age groups around getting involved. And our birds, our bird habitat is all part of our broader ecosystem. So I think while we talk about the birds with some levity, this city has done quite a lot to position us to be the 15th certified bird-friendly city. So staff, again, I think really show up in that space. And then our community groups, like Nature Barrie and others, I think really help to bring residents together. My second announcement is with regards to the Huronia Symphony Orchestra. If you haven't had I will call it joy, of being in Collier United Church, which is just beautiful acoustics, to hear the symphony, I would invite you to do so. But in particular, that orchestra has attracted a pretty high-level maestro, and who is leaving the orchestra. So Maestro Oliver Balabursky, thank you for coming to our community. And I know the orchestra is trying to get the word out that his last concert of the season is on May the 12th at Collier United Church from 3:30 to 6 p.m. So if you have the chance to see him perform, it is brilliant.
Thank you, Councillor Kungle, and certainly looking forward to the announcement of the nuthatch. Just kidding. I didn't wreck it for everyone. I voted 3,100 times on that and still lost. I actually don't know that. It might be the nuthatch. It's not. Okay, so it's not the nuthatch. I'm being told it's not the nuthatch. Okay, so there's a few announcements here. Number one, I just wanted to take the opportunity to recognize May 6th to 12th. It is National Nurses Week. And so I just want to make sure that we take the opportunity to take a moment and recognize that, including two RVH oncology nurses who are receiving awards this week. So congratulations on behalf of the city, and thank you for the work that you do in incredibly sensitive situations, whether it's in oncology or anything else at the RVH and throughout our seniors facilities, clinics, and doctors' offices. To commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a parade and ceremony will be held at the Dunlop Street Cenotaph on Thursday, June 6th at 10:15 a.m. The parade will begin at the intersection of Mulcaster and Dunlop and head down Dunlop Street to the Cenotaph at Meridian Place. For more information, visit barrielegion147.ca. We've already talked about May 11th and the announcement at the Barrie booth there for the official bird, so I'll move on to the new transit network changes that are coming to effect June 2nd. Additional transit on demand zones have been expanded to 5 areas of the city and will be free for the month of May. For more information, please visit barrie.ca. That brings my announcements to a close, and we're going to move into the circulation list for May the 1st. May the 1st? Councillor. Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. C11 is a letter from a law firm, and they're asking for a motion. I'm just wondering what we should be doing with that.
That was C13 24058, correspondence received from Mayor Bayless.
Yes.
On the Elm Street.
Deputy Mayor.
Okay. We're on the same page.
I was going to refer it back to Finance, Mr. Miller.
Okay, all those in favor of the referral motion? And it's approved. Any other items on the circulation? Deputy Mayor, you're on it tonight.
C12 24058, correspondence received from the Downtown BIA, and it's in regards to what they're doing in the summer. And if people remember, This was what I kind of talked about in regards to canceling the snow money to look at reactivating some of the stuff downtown. So I'd like to refer this to Finance and Good Governance.
All those in favor? It carries. Any other items on the circulation list? Are you sure? It's your last chance.
Is there anything in Ward 7 that we can play a prank on Councillor Harvey on right now?
We'll pick on him. I'm not seeing any others, and so that brings us to our adjournment. Thanks, everybody. I jumped past May 8th, didn't I? Yeah. I even put my notes up there so I didn't read them to say May 8th. Floor is yours. Microphone, please.
On the May 8th circulation list, let me just see the number here. I'm sorry, it is, where'd it go? Section A, A7 240508. We're going to memorandum from Dan Bell, Director of Recreation and Culture, and Don McAlpine, General Manager, Community and Corporate Services, regarding a Shack's World proposal for city budget support. I'd like to refer this to Finance and Responsible Government too.
A referral motion to Finance and Responsible Governance Committee with regards to Shack's request for partnership, essentially, that's outlined in the letter. All those in favor of the referral motion? Sorry, if you're in favor of the referral motion, please put your hand up and hold it up for me. Okay, that carries. Any other items on the circulation list? Seeing none, then at 10:14 p.m. we are adjourned. Thanks everyone for all the hard work tonight.